Good evening, everyone. How's it going? Thanks for tuning in tonight to the live stream where I have no idea what to expect. And I kid you not, Curtis only just jumped in the stream about 2 minutes ago, maybe 2.5 minutes ago. I'm not kidding about that. He has not shared anything with me in advance. I have no idea what to expect here, question-wise or anything. So without further delay, here is Curtis Judd. Oh, and by the way, since we are actually kind of reversing, normally the person that's asking the questions would be on the left. I'm going to actually swap here with Curtis and let him lead the discussion. So if you have any questions, obviously put them in chat. But in the meantime, Curtis, you have a notepad in front of you and you have questions, and I'm just going to let you do your thing.
Okay,
Take the lead.
I have very selfish interests here that motivated me to ask you if we could do this.
Okay.
And let me give you some background. So up until this point, all of my sound jobs are single person sound department. It's me. I boom, I mix, I utility, I wire everybody up, so on and so forth. When the pandemic settles down, what I would like to do is start angling for more jobs where it's at least me and a boom operator, not just me. And as such, I need to have the ability to communicate with my boom operator. And so I've always been a little bit foggy, and I think we've talked about this a little bit, but I was hoping we could go into more detail about all the equipment that is required to really make the communications necessary. Because if I think about it from a boom operator perspective, I know you have a set of headphones, of course, mainly for monitoring what you're doing on the boom, but you also need to be able to hear your mixer, and you need to be able to respond back to your mixer. So what's a little unclear to me is on your boom, you've got an audio limited A10 system that you're wirelessly sending the signal back from the boom to the mixer.
Correct.
Okay. But I'm not clear on how you're getting audio from your mixer and how you're talking back to your mixer. And that's what I'm hoping we can talk through.
Sure. And mixers have different ways of doing it. I know the system that, for example, I was using with Michael Wynn was different than the system I was using with Michael Clark when I was on Walking Dead and Stranger Things. So I tell you what, I'll give you a few different ideas of how it's done. How's that?
Okay. That's
the
perfect,
way that we currently are doing it is that I'm using the A10, and he doesn't use a comm system for me to talk back to him. But what happens is if I want to talk to him, what he will say, what he wants me to do, because he'll have me on a speakeasy, like a speaker that I'm broadcasting the boom just for him to listen to. And if for some reason I need to say something to him in private, or if I'm going to chat or really anything, what I will do is I will say, can I get a PL, a private line? And what he will do is he will bring down my level so that anybody on the context would not be able to hear. And then he hits PFL on that boom so that way I can listen to it. So that is the poor man's way to do it. Now, it has pluses and minuses. First of all, if you do that and someone's listening, they're just, my audio just left. I don't know where my audio is. It just totally disappeared. And they might get a little nervous about that. Yep. So if another way to do it is you look at your, like if we do a boom duplex, like he has the boom box version 2 from Remote Audio. And if we go that system, then there is a talkback button on that. It has a 5-pin TA5 that you would plug in there. And we're using the headphones that have the Shure microphone on that, the 7506s that have integrated Shure, I think it's a dynamic microphone on there. But what happens there is that goes back through a second line back to his cart. Now, what he has done when he uses the 788T, which is all the time, is he will disable the channel 8 and use that for me to talk back to him. So actually, wait a minute. No, that's what he uses for his talk back to me. That now that I think about it, because he has to route it. So what he does for me is he has me routing through X2, I believe it is, because he's using a CL8. And so that way he hits, I guess it's one of the returns, one of the extra feeds in on the 788. So that way he can just monitor that return feed and he can get me straight up there. Now, I think Michael Wynn, the way he was using it, he was using, when I worked with him, the 688 system. And he had a switch that he could turn on and off, and he would, enable it or disable it as he would like to. And the same exact thing on the CL8, where you could switch on and switch off whichever X2. Now, I know you can use one of them, for example, to talk if you want to send a voice to the private lines, one to the public lines, that kind of thing. You could set things up in different ways. But by using those returns is usually how my audio will get back to him if I'm using some sort of a wireless talkback system or a boom duplex. Now, if I'm doing any kind of a wireless system and sound mixers want me to talk back to them, they'll do one of a few different things. They could get like a UM450 system and a 411. They could just tie into the regular venue and let me have a channel that's not currently in use. And what I would do is I would take that wireless channel, and you can, if you want to, get a surveillance headset, hook it up so that it's a TA5 compatible thing, and you plug it directly into that. That way, whenever you have the push to talk button, you can just press it and it will automatically push to talk down that channel. It makes a slight pop noise, but then they just basically pre-FL that line the entire time. Now, what happens if you need that channel? At that point, you would end up needing to set up a dedicated line in order to hear me, and that's when you would use those returns again. So that is another way to do it. The way we did it on Stranger Things and Walking Dead, Michael Clark's system at the time, I think he's changed it and gone full Zaxcom now, but the way he was doing it at the time is I had on one side of me the MM1 going into a transmitter that was usually I think it was an SMQV. And then on the other side, I think we were using it might have been another SMQV, now that I think about it. And that was going into one of the Electrosonics ref switches, one of the mute switches, the mute switches. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's, I think it's called Electro Mute, but it basically has an on-off switch. If I would have known the questions you were going to ask me, I would have pulled mine. I actually have one in one of the drawers someplace over there. But it basically is a little black box. It has a little flip switch on it, and it has 3 different places for you to plug in a TA5, I believe it is. And so it would have one feed coming in and one feed. Actually, it's just 2 now that I think about it. It's one coming in and one coming out. And then it basically just cuts it off with a mute, with a silence. And so if you do that, it's always on. And since I was wearing the same kind of headphones that had a microphone that came around, I could flip the little switch and say, what I wanted to, and I would not have to constantly press a button like I would with the surveillance headset.
Okay.
So I could just flip the little switch, talk and say whatever I wanted to. And so if I was talking to the utility or talking to the boom operator or the sound mixer, then we would all be on the same comm system. Now, what he was doing is he was using, I think, a PD3. What was it? It was it's a 3-channel mixer, one of the older 3-channel mixers he was no longer using anymore. And so that way it would collect all of our talkback lines, mine, the sound utility, Dennis, who's now his boom operator, and the sound mixer, Clark. And it would combine he would basically ride the same levels, whatever level we wanted to be. And then whoever was talking was constantly fed through that thing. And we would all hit mute on our mics if we weren't talking, and that would feed in through a return. So that return would broadcast out to everybody.
Okay.
And it's very important for a utility to be able to talk back to if you have one, because the utility is going to be wiring somebody. They might run offset. That way, if I call in something or you would call in something, then we would have enough people there to on comms to be able to say, no, I'm wiring somebody. I can't do that right now, or I'm getting those carpets you asked for, or something. Right. So there's different ways of playing for it, but it all comes into the board through usually the returns.
Okay. And so typically, on this last setup you were talking about, how many packs did you have on you then? You had a transmitter from, were you wirelessly booming too back in the Stranger Things and Walking Dead
Yes.
days?
Oh yeah, we were on Electrosonics SMQV. We were actually going into an MM1, coming out of that with a line level, and I believe we had a 10 dB pad on the cable. That way we would it was a line cable that came out of the MM1 line level, and then I believe it had a 10 dB pad on it going into the Electrosonics transmitter. If you have to gain up on the transmitter a little bit, it gives you a little bit more power, according to what I remember from a talk Gordon Moore did a few years ago. Okay. But So that way it gives you a more acceptable level on the transmitter itself.
Okay.
But
So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no. So I was going to say, so you would have a transmitter for the boom, transmitter
Yes.
for your comm, and a receiver for your
Yes.
comm? Okay.
Well,
You
I would use an R1A usually. Like I would, if
okay.
I'm wireless booming, then I would use an Electrosonics R1A. Or there's also the duet system that you can use, and
Mm-hmm.
it does sound better. The big thing about that though is the range isn't there.
Mm.
The range, it sounds much better. I mean, the fidelity of it is fantastic, but you just don't have the range that you have on an R1A.
That is interesting because
Yeah.
the duets, they're newer systems. That's the digital
They
system,
are.
right?
They are.
Huh.
And probably it's because it's the digital system and it's not analog, and just something about the power modulation. I don't know exactly how it works. I remember testing the duet system, I think about 2 years ago at the Sound Mixers Mixer in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did that, I remember having fantastic range on it. But I think he was using dipoles to send sound to me. And now, I remember using on a movie that comes out, I think, next week, maybe it's the week after that, called Devil All the Time. I shot that in Alabama last year, and I was on the duet system. And unless I remember, it didn't go through walls very well. Now, it could have been the frequencies. I don't think so, though, because actually, it could have been the frequencies because I think he had a different system. Because I remember he'd go into the back and change over some stuff if he was going to have to send me an R1A, because I remember being inside of a couple of the sets, and I was saying, I can't get you on this duet. I need to swap over to the R1A. And he'd say, okay. And he would go behind his cart, mess around with some stuff, and then I'd get the R1A from the utility.
Okay. But it sounds like the R1A is like, if you had to choose, if it were your choice.
Yes, it's a lot better. It's a great system. It's tried and true. I mean,
Right.
I think they're phasing it out, but that means you could probably pick up a good deal someplace online about them. They're still very commonly used.
Yeah, it's funny how these things change, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
Because
you know
duet's
what?
been out for a while.
Yeah, it has. And it's one of those things that is not going to go anywhere. I mean, people are going to constantly use them until they retire because there's nothing wrong with them. They're just being updated by newer gear.
Okay. Excuse me. I'm curious, but the A10 system is digital as well. It's using UHF
Correct.
frequencies, but it's a digital, what it's sending is a digital signal.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find the range on that one?
On the A10?
Yeah, you have any issues with that?
No, not at all. We end up usually the sound mixer will usually, if we're on the stages, he'll use the dipole antennas. And then if we're going exterior, we'll bring out the bat wings. And I mean, there's really on stage, concrete walls and everything, you could just easily get away with the dipoles. LPDAs are going to be more long throw if I'm going to be far away. Now, most of the time, though, with the A10 system, you would only get about 5 or so hours of battery power if you were using it at tip-top power, which is 50 milliwatts.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get a full morning's worth out of, or an afternoon, especially out of it. So what I would usually do is delay for a little bit before I would turn it on. And I would usually start off the day at medium power instead, because I found that medium power, if I gave it a good half an hour or so, the mixer would always say, can you turn on your transmitter, please? I drove him crazy with that. But it would, at least if I did that, I was able to get through the morning without burning out the batteries. Now, there is a phrase we say, don't let a $2 battery ruin your day.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be stingy about batteries if it means not losing a take or something, because you could get something on a boom.
Right. And so what kind of batteries are you typically using then? Are you using alkaline?
Ultimate lithiums.
Okay,
We use ultimate lithiums, or if we're going to use rechargeables, you would switch those out every 3 hours, and then you would use either the black Inaloop Pros by Panasonic,
right.
or actually, believe it or not, I think it's only like 5 milliamp hours or 50 milliamp hours less, but you'll get almost the exact same performance out of them, is the Lada batteries from IKEA.
Yep. That's what I've been using with great.
Yeah, those
results.
are solid.
Yep.
Yeah, they're solid. Yeah.
And a lot less expensive.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
But I believe they're the same kind of cells. I believe they're sourced from the same place.
Panasonic, yeah. because I think Panasonic is the one who makes.
Yeah.
What is it?
At least that's
90%
what the
of
rumors are that I
lithium-ion
heard
batteries.
online is that their source. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. So I'm just kind of trying to map this out because I'm, as I'm getting to be an older man, I don't know if I can do the boom and mix and utility all, all by myself anymore. It's a tiring.
Yeah.
Those are like 14-hour days of that, and I am just, I'm beat.
Oh, tell me about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done it, but I don't like to. I prefer to just do one of the two jobs. And
Yeah. For sure. Okay. All right. That's all the questions. Guess we're done.
that's all your questions, really?
Yep. Yeah. It's great to talk. We'll
We've
talk
been
to you
here
again.
15 minutes. We still have hours and hours of time to fill up here, Curtis.
Well, let me ask you this. Are you already amped up on ZipFizz, or is that coming later?
Oh no, I was actually I'm fully prepared to ask you what color we should choose.
Which one is the one that generally triggers ADHD? Is that the red?
Oh, I don't know. It's they all do the same thing. I think usually, yeah, they're the same exact flavor. I usually, if I'm adding it to water, I usually prefer the fruit punch. If I go straight with it, then it's
Whoa,
it's
whoa, whoa, whoa.
I mean,
Wait a
this is
minute,
the
wait,
one I was
wait,
actually
wait,
going earlier.
Wait. Straight with it. What do you mean by straight with it?
Just
Oh, you're kidding me.
Mm.
And then just let it dissolve?
Mhm.
And it just kind of, that goes straight to your bloodstream.
I mean, probably. It's probably. I mean, it fizzes up like crazy,
Okay.
but it's something that when you're on set and you don't have time or the desire to pour it into one of these things. I mean, you've seen me.
Oh yeah.
I like it strong. I don't like to, take an entire 16.9 fluid ounce bottle and fill it up and drink a little watered down thing. Load me up with the ZipFizz.
Okay. All right. No, I'm just curious because my onset, you're absolutely right. One thing that's I think critical is, well, you just received a new challenge here. You might want to check that out. There's a little super chat for you. From our friend Bandrew.
Thanks, Bandrew.
He's paying you $5. $5
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah, he's going to be a troll. Oh, geez, there's
so good to
Timothy.
have him. Oh yeah, almost
Yeah.
forgot about the ZipFizz fund. There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
So
okay, thanks, Timothy.
so let's actually cover this. Let's cover onset nutrition because you know what it's like. You do very long days, and the reality is that you don't always get a full break at mealtime. Whatever.
Mhm.
You sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. So what do you do other than ZipFizz? I mean, ZipFizz is obviously one of them. We've talked about that a whole bunch. What else do you do? Keep your levels up.
Okay. It is very important that you hydrate. Hydrate keeps everything going. But then one of the things that is, especially in the hot weather, like what we're experiencing right now, you need to have 3 bottles of water and then either a Powerade, Gatorade, a ZipFizz in water, something along those lines in order to replenish your electrolytes. Otherwise, your entire body, all the electrical, you need saline in going through your body or salt to carry the electrical pulses.
Yep.
And if you don't have it, your entire body, I mean, think about water. If you have pure water, electricity doesn't travel through there very well at all. But if you have salt water, like an ocean, it'll travel a very far distance. And it's just, science for you. Now, that is just hydration that we're talking about. If you're in a drier place like you usually, work out of, you might have to hydrate even more often, especially if you're in the salt plains or something. You're going to end up having some crazy amount of dehydration. Here in the South, the big thing is you want to try to stay covered up. You want to try to stay out of the sun, obviously out there too, but you'll sweat like a beast. So a lot of the times people will have some sort of issue like that. Now, Crafty will usually come out, and this is of course pre-COVID. Now I'll talk to you about post-COVID and stuff like that here in a moment. But what it usually ends up being is that you would have craft services and they would come out with a selection of fruit, perhaps yogurts that call, different soft drinks. Coffee is a big must on a set. You'll have all kinds of different things. And then there's, of course, catering before that. I don't know if you usually have a big selection like that on corporate jobs are the kind of jobs that you mainly do. But if you do, you sometimes need to grab snacks for later.
Right.
Grab some granola to save for later. I mean, one of the things we used to do is we used to load up with bacon. I used to always have catering make me bacon in the oven. And so I would take that bacon and it would be extra crispy, the kind that you could, the piece of bacon this long, you could hold it on just the end and it's completely horizontal. We would take that and load up a to-go container with it. And then usually in the afternoon, have everybody's mouth, drooling as we would pull that out and make sandwiches. We'd make bacon BLTs or something like that with something on the set. And I would just have a bacon sandwich like this thick. And if you think I'm joking about that, I'm not.
I don't.
So that's the reason why when you would have talked to me about nutrition, I don't know if you saw the look on my face. I was like, when I talk to me about nutrition, look at me. But but most of the time, people prefer to have something like usually fruit in the morning to get yourself going and to have, a good solid amount of fiber. You'll also usually get energy from things like apples. And then usually in the afternoon, people will usually start to do more along the lines of the vegetables. They'll bring out the vegetable trays and that kind of thing. And still, they'll come out with usually a morning pass about 3 hours into the day and then 3 hours into the afternoon. And that could be anything. It could be, pizza rolls, or it could be sub sandwich tray, or it could be, anything. But the main thing is people will have different dietary restrictions. And so if you're a vegan, obviously there's going to be stuff for you there. If you're that way inclined, if you're just a vegetarian, there's going to be other things. If you're a carnivore, there's things for you as well, which is usually the kind of stuff that I stick to. But the main thing is don't starve yourself. You'll learn the production real quickly if it's going to be, a good month or two or multi-month long project. That's usually the kind of thing that you'll develop the flow of and learn how they do things. Because Crafty, I've been on shows before where Crafty doesn't bring food out until the 5th hour and you go to lunch at the 6th hour. So it's like they're going to feed you right before you go to lunch. So do you eat it? Do you not? And sometimes people will say, well, I'll tell you what, before I dig into that, let's see what catering has today. And they're going to say, oh, they have, whatever they have. They'll come back and determine whether or not they want to eat it. Now, the funny thing is, I have now, post-COVID, received 2 different, I'm going to be starting a Warner Brothers show next month, and I've received 2 emails. The first email had, well, actually, it's the same email, but there's 2 files. The first one is 136 pages long about COVID compliancy and all the different details and information. The second one is only 80.
Okay.
So I've gone through them, and they're going to be trying to stick more to French hours, which is usually considered about 10 hours. They will not normally send you to lunch and unless they can stagger it. They may say if you're a grip team and you have 8 people, maybe we'll send 3 grips, then another 3 grips when they come back, and another 3 grips, and you'll kind of stagger it and grab your food, come back. Sound department, I don't know if we'll be able to do that unless there's a long lighting setup. Usually, boom operators are not going to have the luxury of leaving set as often as a sound mixer or utility. So what you can always do is send the utility or somebody to grab food. But then now they're starting to do different things with regards to like zones and groups and things like that on set. Like, for example, I was just talking to a boom operator that's going to be doing a Marvel show, and then he's going to be going over to Walking Dead earlier today. And he was saying that they're going to be doing 10-hour days, not pausing for lunch. Normally you do 6 hours, you pause for a half-hour lunch, 6 more hours, and then you're done. This is the first time in filmmaking history that producers and everybody have acknowledged that sleep actually plays a role in health. So that's a big thing, because what they're doing now is they're going to say, we're going to try to stick to a 10-hour day, because they understand as soon as they break you for lunch, cast and everybody is going to probably, go for touches. And then when they get back to set, everyone's going to be groggy. Everybody's going to slow down. There's a joke. What is the only thing a crew can do in an hour? Take a half-hour lunch. And that's the joke that we always say on set. And it's absolutely true, because as soon as the actors come back, and as soon as we come back, you're going to have boom operators dipping into the shot. You're going to have camera operators that just are like, oh, geez, I botched that move. Actors are going to be stuttering over their lines. They're going to say, man, we should have just finished this scene before lunch. And that's what you'll always hear on set. And if you power straight through it, Usually you'll have just as much performance out of everybody if you do it that way. And that's a nice thing. But then you're going to have the zone system on many shows. And it could be where there's like people that are on set and then people that are offset. On Warner Brothers shows, there's like 8 different colors. If you're if you're in the blue zone, you're considered work from home. You don't need to come to set. If you're in the white zone, you're in the production office. You don't need to come to set for any reason. If you're in, another color, then you're not going to be really interacting with the shooting crew. If you're in the green zone, you're going to be considered to be offset away from the actors. If you're in the yellow zone.
So just pause. So mixer would be in the green zone, right?
No, mixer would actually be in the yellow zone, because a yellow zone on a Warner Brothers show, at least, is going to be somebody that could be in the vicinity of the actors, but not within 6 feet.
Okay.
The boom operator and the sound utility are considered red zone. And that would mean that we have the ability to be within 6 feet of an actor, because we need to. If you're wiring and you're a sound utility, or you're a boom operator on set, I might have to stand next to an actor for an over or something. So, but they're being strict about a lot of the procedure. Like, for example, you will hear on some shows, it's 10 minutes and 6 feet, or 15 minutes and 6 feet. And what that refers to is you are considered to be exposed if you are within 6 feet of someone for over 10 or 15 minutes. So if I'm on set and I'm standing next to an actor and we do take after take after take, and I look down at my watch and I see that it's only been 10 minutes, cool, no problem. If we just did more and more takes, and then suddenly I look down at my watch and it's been 18 minutes, I'm technically considered exposed at that time. So if an actor were to end up sick and test positive for COVID, because they're going to be testing people in the red zone on this show every, 3 times a week. So if we are tested and an actor, or let's say I come back testing positive, then what they're going to have to do is they'll say, who have you been exposed to for the past 2 weeks?
Okay.
Or whatever the time frame is. And at that point, they're gonna say, okay, all those people are gonna have to completely leave set. You're gonna be quarantined at home for 14 days. Now, the reason this comes into play in this whole conversation about nutrition is because Crafty has changed. It used to be they would come out with coolers, they'd fill them up with ice, they'd load it up with water bottles, another one would be loaded up with diet drinks, another one with Gatorade and Powerade, LaCroix, that kind of thing, another one with regular soft drinks and that kind of thing, and they'd wheel those from place to place. They're not able to do that anymore, because it used to be that, like on Walking Dead, for example, you'd be working out amongst, the woods and stuff. Someone would walk, wipe off their hands as well as possible, stick it in the drink cooler. And if they had, poison ivy on their hands, they could potentially spread that to crew by sticking it inside the water cooler. I'm not aware of that happening on Walking Dead, but I have heard of that happening on other shows. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this is because post-COVID, now they're having to change things up. It used to be that they would have tables laid out with food everywhere. We go over, grab whatever we want to off the table. Now we're supposed to keep a distance. And there's going to be a designated crafty person standing right there that you'd say, I would like a Zip Fizz, please. I would like another Zip Fizz, please. I would like another 3 Zip Fizzes, please. And whatever the case may be, they'll hand it to you. Now, I've heard from people that it makes them less interested in wanting food, because if you have someone that looks at you and has to hand you stuff, you don't want to bother them all day. And it also means that you're not going to go over and grab a handful of, something mince or chocolate Hershey Kisses or something, put it in your pocket, because they're going to have to hand it to you and you don't want to seem like a pig.
Yeah, or 2 pounds of bacon.
Yeah, or 2 pounds of bacon. And as a matter of fact, catering has very strict restrictions. They are not, it's not buffet style where we just go over and make whatever we want to anymore. If they have catering, we'll go up to the window, we'll tell them what we want, and they will prepare it and then hand it out through a little window. Mm-hmm. Some caterers do that. Most of them don't.
Right. Yeah.
So
I've always ever seen just self-serve. It's like out on a big table, buffet style. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Interesting. So well, first of all, I don't work on productions the size of the productions that you work on. So mine in the corporate world, basically you're on your own. Maybe when we finish a big project, we can go out to lunch and expense it. But
yeah.
But
especially now that you can write those off now.
Yeah, exactly. But when I do the freelance work, that's when, we typically would have, I can't tell you how many times people just order pizza, they just
Yeah.
order pizza and that's, that's what you get. So since I do have some dietary restrictions, thanks to my German ancestry, I cannot eat gluten or it'll be a mess for everybody. So,
Mhm.
so I end up bringing a lot of my own stuff. And I think the thing that keeps me going a lot is I'll have some, in my sound bag, I'll have some Cliff Bars or whatever,
Yeah.
typically an apple or two. The apples work really, really well because I feel like
Mhm.
the apples will help keep your blood sugar at a pretty good level without a big jolt. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's a kind of a steady kind of thing. So that works pretty well for me.
Yeah.
Um,
Bananas, I know, will spike them, and then you can
yeah,
actually have a crash after a banana.
exactly.
Usually in
Exactly.
like the retirement communities, like my grandfather's community, for example,
Mhm.
if if people start to have high blood sugar when they go to their doctor and they say, "Oh, you're on the borderline for diabetes," how many? But usually the big question they'll say is, "How many bananas do you normally eat?" Those are, well, I have a banana every morning. Don't have that banana every morning
Yeah, stop
anymore,
with
and
the
usually
banana.
that cuts it down. So it's amazing how much sugar there actually is in a banana.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's just like it seems like there's this glycemic index or something where it actually indicates certain foods tend to have that kind of jolting effect
Hmm.
versus a more steady stream effect. But in any case, that's what I find. So I'm with you 100%. Water I've got to have in steady stream of water, but I've also got to get some other things into my body, and I think that's where the Cliff Bars help. I can't really drink a lot of sugar drinks. Like even Gatorade and stuff is just tough. Like I just can't do that very well. So that's where for me the
Yeah,
Cliff Bars kind of help out some here. So um,
yeah.
Kevin
Kevin's
is
Kevin's
soliciting.
Kevin's being a fun troll there.
Thanks.
So let me actually back up here to this question here. I still don't understand why you can work 12 to 14-hour days without racking up tons of overtime. You would think overtime would be a deterrent to safe working hours, aid at work, aid for sleep, aid for whatever. Well, here's the thing. As I understand it, here's the way it came to be. It used to be, and this could be me being misinformed, but it does have the air of truth to it. So I'm going to share hearsay. As I understand it, the way it originally was is that people worked 8 hours a day for films and television. And then as World War II hit, they had to freeze the pay scale. They could not pay people more. And so when that happened, they were trying to figure out ways of paying people more to get good crew without actually paying them more on the books. So what they started saying is, we're going to pay you for a 10-hour day. So they were paying crew a little bit more by saying, we'll pay you a 10-hour day. And that was considered a 10-hour guarantee. So that way you would get that 10-hour day regardless of how many hours you work. Usually it would be an 8-hour. Then after enough people started doing that, productions were like, well, geez, if we're paying for 10-hour days on everybody, we should just start working them 10-hour days. And then crews started saying, I need now more money. And they weren't able to do that. So they started saying, I'll pay you for a 12-hour day. You see where we're going with this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then after the productions ended up no longer able to, having to freeze wages, and they were able to release that and increase wages at that point, they were like, well, we're used to working a 12-hour day, we might as well do that. Now, the way the film industry works is different than any other, at least that I know of. And I actually have a video, if you look on YouTube and do a search for the mysterious film industry time card, I explain all about how you calculate hours. The way it works in the film industry is not where as soon as you hit 40 hours a week, you go into overtime. That's not the way it works. It is by day. You work 8 hours. Then for the next, depending on the contract you're on, it could be the next 4 hours. It could be for the next, it could be up until 14 elapsed hours. At that point, you hit time and a half. Anything over that, either 12 hours or 14 elapsed, is at that point double time. So the film industry in the past has had this structure in place. That way if you're worked extra hard on a day, you're going to definitely, get paid premium money for that. So now that they're starting to cut back hours to more French hours, 10-hour days, it's technically going to start cutting into our pockets a little bit, but it's going to mean that we're going to, not be on a show for 7 months and our kids forget what we look like, and
Right.
startle when they see you on the weekends. Who are you?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and this is, just to be clear, this is all in the context right now that you're talking of union, right?
Well, yes,
Because
technically so.
because I'm not
Go
union
ahead.
and it works differently. For me, it's very much as a freelance, when this is freelancing too. So it's like, okay, we can hire you as a sound guy. What's your daily rate? What's your kit rate?
Right.
And sometimes that works out great for me, and sometimes that means I'm working 16-hour days. So it just depends, like, and a lot of times what'll happen on the productions, a lot of my productions are very short. So they're, maybe 2 days. A lot of times what'll happen is the first day will be really long, like you know, easily at least 12, often 14, sometimes even 16. And then the second day, which will also be a full day rate, will only be like a 6 or 7 hour day. So it usually ends up evening out, but it can be kind of brutal, just getting your sail through the first day.
Very
But I
much.
think it works a little bit differently though. Like in union, there's a little bit more, there's more structure, it seems like. And there's like,
Yeah.
there are kind of rules and things that kind of protect, at least attempt to protect those that are on crew.
Well, even a lot of non-union movies and TV shows, usually, if they want to get better crew, or I shouldn't say better crew, I should say crew that are more union, that are used to used to working union shows and would prefer to work those, they
Hmm.
will abide by the union rules.
Hmm.
But if there's something like asking for grace, for example, which is something that if you hit the 6 hour mark, we would be due a meal on a union show.
Hmm.
If you hit the 6 hour mark on a non-union show, so what? There's nothing that says you have to eat at that point. They can make it 6.5 hours or 7 hours or 8 hours, whatever they want, before they feed you, and there's no penalties. The way it works on a union show is usually for the first half hour that they violate. And that means as soon as you go over into the first minute of that 6th hour, then you get $7.50 to your pocket. The next half an hour, you would get a $10. The next one after that, $12.50, and $12.50 is reoccurring for every additional half hour. Now, there are little stipulations like if they wrap you at exactly 12 hours, the crew technically has until 12 and a half working hours in order for you to not accrue any meal penalties or, and at the end of the day. And little things like that. You can also ask for lunch. You can ask for grace. And some people will just say, we're calling grace. But what grace is depending on the contract, it's usually like 12 minutes. Sometimes it's 15 minutes. But what it will do is it would give an opportunity to finish the scene or a setup, whatever, it depends on the contract. Like in production cities like California, for example, if you call grace, they're allowed to do a lot more. And I believe there's also an extension. I've never worked in California. I believe there's also something called an extension where you could get a full half an hour. And I don't know what the difference is there. But I know that in Georgia and many other of the places that I've worked in the Carolinas and in Alabama, is if they call grace, then you have 12 minutes or 15, whatever the contract is, to not have to accrue meal penalties. But there are rules. Like, for example, they can maybe zoom in, and that's kind of in the weird zone right there, whether or not if you zoom in, that's considered to be changing the shot up. If you change lenses, absolutely, the script supervisor is going to progress a letter, and that dictates right there that you've changed the shot. Therefore, grace would be violated if you roll. So the rule basically is if the scene number progresses or the scene letter progresses and the script supervisor says, now this is Charlie or now this is Delta, whatever it happens to be, then at that point, you would say grace has been violated. So you'll hear first ADs, no. If you progress a letter, we're not going to do that. So one of the tricks they'll sometimes use is they'll say, keep rolling. Here, push the dolly in. Now, go here. And they'll set a lens that way it will start as wide. And they'll say, now, because you're rolling, you can do this kind of thing. And they'll say, push in, and then let's roll it now. And they have little tricks up their sleeves that they'll do like that.
Right. Okay. Let's talk a little bit more, if you don't mind. So so a couple things. Number one, if you are union, you can work non-union jobs?
Yes, you can. However, if there's too many union people that start working on that show, it could be one of those things that if the union gets tipped off about it, then the union can say, okay, we got to organize this thing because you have too many union people. I don't remember what the exact numbers are. Yeah. They'll send a union business agent usually to set, and they'll say, we need to talk. You're using mostly union crew. They need to be paid union benefits. Okay. And so And that means that anybody who is non-union that works on that show, if it flips, would therefore have the option of joining the union if they'd like. Now, there's probably going to be like fees and stuff they'd have to pay too, but
I've heard actually that's not a bad way to join the union.
yeah.
I mean, I've heard people say that. Like that is a very, it's a legitimate way to.
Yeah, one of my
become a
friends
union
worked on Dances with Wolves. He said it was going to be it was a non-union show back in the day. They were going to be shooting up in, wherever they were shooting out in South Dakota or something like that. And he said that they were shooting out there for a few weeks and they all of a sudden flipped. And that's how he got his union card. Because at the time, it used to be a lot more difficult to actually join the union.
Yeah.
So real quick, I need you. Yeah, it is. It is. And you still have your dues to pay. I know some unions that are more expensive. If you change from a PA and you finally become DGA, then you would have a huge amount due. But one of the things the DGA will do is they won't charge you $3,000 out front because if you're a PA, you will have been working $15 an hour or something like that. And you may have a lot of hours, but you can't exactly shell out $3,000 the second you get your 600 days in. So what they would do is they would say, okay, we're going to allow you to finance this. As soon as you get your first, second show or something like that, that's when you start paying us. Little things like that. Okay. Real quick, a very important question for you. Not green, purple, red, or orange?
I'd say definitely red.
Okay. There we go. You picked the color for us.
Let's go.
Okay. So now we know what we're going to do.
So how are we going to do that? Or is that going into water or is that going straight in the gullet?
Oh, it's going to be something I'll just take out here as we're talking. Okay. We have 38 people in here that have come here just to watch me eat a Zip Fizz while talking to Curtis Judd. That's the entire reason they're here.
Okay. So, fair enough. Yeah.
Let me actually, our Brent Lloyd here has an interesting thing here. Freelance in DC, we try to work 10-hour days, and our rate card is 10 to 12 hours. In 1.5 and 12 plus, we are 2 times that, just a little peak at DC Freelance, just a world. I'm gonna mention one other thing in that video that I talked about a few minutes ago, which I should almost find the link and post it here. It's a video that I strongly recommend watching if you are filling out time cards or interested in something regarding film, sound, and doing time cards. The reason I recommend watching the Mysterious Film Industry Time Card video is because in that I go into a little bit about how productions will trick you. Here's an example. Let's just say, for simplicity's sake, even though these would be very, very low rates, let's just say that you say my rate is $500 for 10 hours. Okay, that's a low rate. But if you were to do that, I'm gonna bring up a calculator here. If you were to take that, the first 8 hours would technically be at regular time, and the next 2 hours would be at time and a half. So if you take $500 and you divide that now by 11, which is 8 hours at regular time and 2 hours at time and a half, it's $45.45 per hour.
Right.
Now, if you go over, 10 hours, then that rate becomes time and a half, and it would go that way until you hit about 12 hours. But I'm going to show you something here. If you were to land one of these shows, and they say to you, could you help us out and give us a 12-hour guarantee instead? Can you make your $500 day rate now for 14 hours? What you're doing is giving yourself a pay cut, and a tremendous one at that. Because, for example, if you were to now take $500 and divide that now instead by 14, which is 8 hours, and then 4 hours at time and a half, now your hourly rate is $35.71. Now, here's what they'll do. Producers that come back to town will only look in the computers as what it was listed as. And if they look at your hours and they say, well, looking at it, it's got to be a 10-hour guarantee that we gave these guys here. So at that point, what they'll do is they'll look at it and they'll say 35.71 times 11 is now $392.81. That must be $400 a day as a kit rental, as a day rate. So from $500 for 10 hours, if you give production an extra 2 hours and you say, sure, I'll give you a 12-hour guarantee, they're going to put it in the system as your hourly rate of $35.71, not $45.45. And so when you come back, or when the producer comes back, they're going to say, what are you talking about? The going rate there is only $35.71 or $400 for 10. And so you basically, by accepting that additional 2 hours in your guarantee, have given yourself and everyone else a pay cut of $100. So it is very important that productions have the money. You want to stick them to it.
Yeah. So I'm curious, so do you have to look out for yourself, or does the sound mixer generally take care of those negotiations for the department?
That's a great question. And it depends on the person, depends on the show. Some sound mixers will handle all the negotiations for the entire department. They'll say, they'll ask their team, what kind of rate do you want to work for? And then they'll go and they'll approach the UPM and they'll say, I'm this rate, or they might have their agent do it. And then they'll say, my boom operator is this rate. This is the person I want. Now there may be pushback and they'll say, we're not going to pay out that much for a boom operator. Well, how much are you willing to pay? Can you also add on top of it a kit rental then? And they'll start maybe negotiating. If you have your sound mixer negotiate for you, they can say, we're a team. I need to have my team with me to do this show. And I've worked with some mixers that will say, we're either all or nothing. We're a team here. And they'll say, fine, I'll pay your rate. Some mixers I've worked for say, no. Your money is your business. I'm going to negotiate my rate. And then when I've gone up to talk to the UPM and negotiated my rate, they're like, all I can pay is this. No, that's not my rate. That's what I can pay. If you want to be on the show, then you're going to have to. And you have to make the decision of whether or not you want to walk away. Now you play hardball and say, okay, I'm going to go back to the sound mixer and say, sound mixer, they're not willing to budge and this is not enough for me. And the sound mixer that comes back and says, hey, this is who I want to have as my boom operator. You need to actually pay him more. I've had sound mixers before take a pay cut from themselves in order to get me. So it depends on the sound mixer, depends on the rate. If you're getting a Y1, a Y, a Y rate, Y1 daily, Y1 weekly. I don't know if you're familiar with that rate structure. But basically those are more like production city rates. Usually they're in the nature of 65 to even higher per hour, depending on what it is. And usually if you're on a Y1 daily, it's going to be a higher rate than a Y1 weekly, because a weekly would be considered like this is a weekly show. If it's a Y1 daily, they'll say this is more like a commercial type rate. It's going to be a little bit higher. Right. So what some mixers will say is if you're not willing to, pay me a Y1 weekly, then in that case, then pay me a Y1 daily. And so they can sometimes use that as a negotiating point. Now, those rates are just starting points. Mm-hmm. Boom operators, for example, are typically considered to be a Y8 rate if you're going by LA rates and union rates. But one of the things that a boom operator has become over the years is more valuable, just like a sound utility is. It's not just a person that wrangles cables anymore. There's now a very big part of that job. So what they now will consider a boom operator to be is an operations supervisor, a sound operations supervisor. So it's a Y4 rate. And that's just if you're now in smaller markets, you're not going to really run into that rate structure as much. It's going to be, they're going to say, oh, well, this is a non-union rate. Yeah. On union shows, they won't do that. They'll say, well, the going negotiated rate for the sound team is going to only be, they'll come in at something usually low ball. The minimum union rate is, $21.23. You're like, no, you gotta double that and then we'll talk. Something along those lines. That's when you'll start to really negotiate. And that's when productions will really start to talk to you about your rate. Some productions will say, I can't do this, but there was one show that I was approached about years ago. Sony was the main parent company, and they said you're not allowed to pay a boom operator more than $25 a day or $25 an hour. And people were like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do $25 an hour. Are you kidding me? And the UPM knew it. So what the UPM was doing is he started saying, okay, I tell you what, if you come aboard our show, I'll give you $200 a day kit rental. And so they started to do that. Now, what that means is if you come to set and you work a 5-hour day and then cast members get sick and you end up, or you get snow, rain, torrential downpour, and you say, well, we don't have the opportunity to go out on location anymore. So I guess we're going to call wrap because we can't pull anybody in here for additional scenes. At that point, you say, sorry, we're kind of, up the creek without a paddle, early wrap. then that means that $200, for the day is an entire day rental turned out pretty good there.
Yep.
But you could also work an 18-hour day and it doesn't change at all either way. So I've actually the biggest, and then that particular UPM was so desperate to get someone he knew. And I had done the previous season on that show. He said, if you join, I'll pay you the $25 an hour and I'll give you $300 day kit rental. But I was already on necessary roughness. So I said, I can't do it, man. Can't do it. So he was like, ah. But I don't know who he ended. Oh, I do know who he got because I ended up actually taking over for that boom operator later that season. Now that I think about it. So let's see here. We have a few. Thank you about saying grace. It's one of the jokes that we say about that is, how the first AD will call grace. And if they're not technically supposed to call it every day, but when a first AD will call grace or ask for it, technically, if they do it too many times, that's when the crew will start to say, look, you can't call it every single day. You can't do it every day. That's not what it's for.
Right.
And usually I'm full of jokes on set. I'll used to say, aren't you supposed to say grace before lunch? And I'll just start, stirring the pot there, making everyone like, stop. We're trying to have a negotiation here. We're trying to talk. It's really funny. A lot of non-union shows keep up with the union schedule. And actually it's cool because they don't do a lot of overtime. That's right. A lot of the time. Now he does a lot of bag work. You can see his avatar there. Yeah. And he definitely knows his way. And I think he's in your neck of the woods, even, I believe.
Is that right? Where are you based? Do we say Rado?
Yeah. I've always called him Rado or Rado, I believe. I don't know. Rado. I've always looked at it and said, that's Rado.
I've heard your name before. I think I've definitely seen you over on the jwsoundgroup.net.
Yeah, he's definitely been there. He's all over the place. He's in the sound forums and stuff. He's very knowledgeable. As a matter of fact, he's working on some stuff to make the industry better. Aren't you?
Excellent.
We've talked about that in another live stream recently. Oh my gosh, look at who pops up in here. Michael Wynn. Michael Wynn is only in a right to work state like Georgia, not LA. Yeah. Same here in Tennessee. Virginia is a right to work state. Let's see here. Okay, so Kevin, what color is it? Yeah, it's gonna be red. So Curtis called it. So we're gonna slowly start going through this one. I've now got the wrapper off there.
We're gonna get
let's look at
the red color. Is the powder actually red?
Oh yeah, it's
okay,
it's fruit punch color. It's fruit punch flavor. So
you're getting the sugar, the caffeine, and the artificial coloring.
Oh, there's no sugar in Zip Biz.
There's no sugar.
There's no sugar. They have artificial sweeteners, I'm sure, but it's no actual sugar. It's got 205 milligrams of caffeine, which is going to be awesome to do, this close to midnight. And it's got, this is the big fun one, vitamin B12, 2,500 milligrams, which is 104,167% of your daily value.
Are you sure that's not micrograms? Come on, read that carefully. Is it MCG or MG?
Oh, it is MCG.
Okay, micrograms. I was going to say, dude.
Is that MCG is micrograms?
Yes.
What is it?
I believe it's
milligrams. Oh, okay. Yeah, milligrams, micros. Yeah, so it would be MCG.
Okay. All right. I was worried about you.
That would have been a lot, wouldn't it? That'd be pretty awesome. Agreed. 12 hours is a high rate. Then what a 10-hour rate is. They ask for a 12-hour guarantee. They get a 12-hour price. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I will see people fire back at them. They'll say, look, you're asking something from me. You got to give something for it. That's the way that negotiations work between IATSE and, Producers Guild and stuff. If you were to say, again, low rates, but if you were to say, well, I'm $500 for 10, and they say, can you make that for 12 instead? You'll say, okay, let me do some math here. And then if you say, well, let's see, 45 times 11 would be 500. But if I multiply that by 14, so yeah, my rate is now going to be, I'll give you $636.30 for, or let's just call it a good $640 for 12. And they're going to say, but wait a second, you just went up on your rate. You just went up on your hours. And that's when you have to make the decision of whether or not you want to do that for a client you don't know. And that's the little trick they'll use is they'll try to get you to extend out the amount of time. And they want you to do that. Some show will shop around and they'll find someone, whoever they can get, that will agree to certain terms like that. And so you may end up losing work because of it. But it's something you got to think about.
Yeah. It looks like Podcastage has a very important questions about whether or not you've eaten another Zip Fizz yet, because I think you've been very busy talking that you haven't been keeping the ingestion.
I don't talk in live streams, Curtis. I don't talk ever.
You shout?
I
yell.
we should. And that was a question that was asked earlier, in Twitter. Is this going to be? I think you even said it. Is this going to be a screaming stream? And I said, I think that's going to have to be a pay-per-view event. That's what a question that Curtis got in his comments at one point. I got a question in my comments at one point. Are we ever going to do a screaming collaboration where we just scream into microphones back and forth? Yeah, I think that's going to have to be a pay-per-view event.
Testing max SPL, testing the limiters, testing, all that kind of stuff, dynamic range.
Yeah, as a millennial, if you don't get into a union pension, the retirement age would be 90. Yeah, well, who knows? By that point, it could very well be, tiers. Okay, let me talk about tiers real quick. If you're working on a union show, tiers are basically the money level, I guess you could say, of the show. I don't remember what the exact are, but there's there's like a low budget contract, ASA agreement, minimums, which could have a boom operator getting like $17 and change an hour. Sound mixer might be at $19 and change an hour. That's a low budget kind of contract. Tier 1 would be, I think, a movie that has up to like $1.2 million, something like that. I don't remember exactly the numbers. Tier 2 could be a movie with a budget up to maybe $3.5 million or something like that. And then a tier 3 would be, up to, I think, 12 million. Yeah, I don't remember the exact numbers. I'm going off of like 10-year, 15-year-old information or something. And I don't remember what it is. But those tiers will change the minimum amount that they can pay you for your work. So if you're on the low budget contract, they may say you're only going to be $17 an hour, but on a tier 1 it could be minimum is 19. And then on a tier 2 it could be a minimum of 21, and then on tier 3 it could be a minimum of 26. It depends on the contract. Now, sometimes low budget contracts will have deals that they'll give you that you're not going to have on the tier shows. You might say, why is that? Well, it's to keep people from I guess, taking advantage of a cheap crew. And I don't think triple time plays in over 15 hours. I remember hearing someone, I've never verified that, but I think someone told me at one point, triple time starts in at 15 hours. I've not run into a show where triple time comes in. So I think that's hearsay. But one thing I do know that's happened on some of the low budget contracts is I've known those shows will get paid holiday pay when you might not normally get it. So usually, for example, on a scripted episodic television show that is going to be, let's say, you might have 8 days that you get paid holiday pay per year if you're in the union. You'll get New Year's Day, you'll get Labor Day, Memorial Day, Christmas, Thanksgiving, day after Thanksgiving, 4th of July, and Easter, I believe, or whatever they call, an Easter-like holiday. I forgot the exact term. I think those are the 8 holidays they give you. And one of them, I believe, also is floating, that they can move. I think in my union, they moved it to earlier in the year, like around February or March, which I wish they would move it later in the year because that's when more crews are going to be working and could actually use it. Local 600, I believe, their floating holiday is, I think, in like October or something. I forgot what it is. But I remember they got it. And we even worked on their holiday on Black Lightning last year. And so they started the day off at time and a half, which I remember they were really happy about because it ended up being a longer day. So, but that's the tier structure that he's asking about right there. So wait a second. You said we pronounced it right. I pronounce it right, or Curtis pronounces it right. Now we're going back to old information.
Okay, so you say it again.
Rado?
That's what I think, Rado. Yeah.
Rado? Tell me if that is yes or no. If not, we'll start changing it around and butchering it. Even worse than we're, I'm sure, already doing it.
We want to get it right. We really do want to get it right.
We do. I do. I definitely want to get it right. Because I've seen your name written so many times. I think I've even talked to you before, but I've never addressed you by name. I'm sorry?
He's in Vegas.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he's right. He's like I said, your neck of the woods.
Right. Only a 7-hour drive.
Oh, I thought you worked a lot in Vegas. Do you not?
No, I'm in Park City, Utah.
Oh, I mean Utah. It's just it's a state.
Actually, and it's not seven.
How
It's not
big could
7
Utah
hours.
possibly be? I've actually been
It's
out
not
there. I've
7
been to
hours.
Park City. It's pretty nice.
Have you?
Yeah,
You came to
I
Park
was
City
out
and you
there.
didn't tell me?
Well, this was years ago. This
Oh,
was
okay.
let's see. When I was on Necessary Roughness,
Mm-hmm.
the producers and UPM were so cheap. How cheap were they? They were so cheap they did not want to pay us for 4th of July. So they would give us a week hiatus.
Okay.
They would say, you're going to take that week off, even though we wrapped season 2, I believe we wrapped 3 weeks later. Season 3, I believe we wrapped only 2 weeks later. And so after working 4 or 5 months, they would say, okay, well, you're going to have a little bit of a break there. The funny thing about that was my wife and I decided to take our $2 at the time on a road trip. So we went the first time, we took a road trip to South Dakota, I believe it was Hot Springs, South Dakota. And when we were out there, we went through the Black Hills and stuff, which was really awesome. And then we drove back. The next year, during the same exact week, we had a Saturday to a Sunday. That 9 days, we took a road trip and we drove out, through Arizona to New Mexico. And that's where you really see some cool stuff. You'll happen, be in the city, and then it'll start to get a little bit more country. You'll start to see cows and horses. Then it gets a little bit more fields and then farms. And then it becomes a little more desert. Then you start seeing some really weird stuff and cactus and everything. And then by the time you get out there all the way to like Flagstaff, Arizona, there was the big meteor crater. And then from there, I believe we went north into Utah, and there was fire on the side. And there was fires up in the trees. We kept going through, all this the fiery, stuff up there, which was hilarious. And we'd stop at these really cool little shops along the way and have like a sandwich or something and then continue on. But we went to in Park City. There's probably multiples, but I remember there was a ski lift that we went up in. It was in the summer. So it was not, ski season, but there was an amusement park right there. I should send you some pictures of it, not in the live stream, but let you see if you can identify where it is. Cause you can probably look at it and say, oh yeah, I'm right there. I'm, pretty close. But yeah, if I were to come out there to Park City, I would definitely reach out.
And likewise.
So a good rate for a boom operator is around 500 for 10 now. That's not a boom operator rate. If you are getting something like that, usually it's going to be for an ENG sound kit, and 500 for 10 is actually a low rate, I should say, for most people. If you're talking
so that's day rate. Day rate plus if you were like an independent like me, like I would charge $650, $750 plus kit.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just talking day rate there, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, do you actually refer to it as a kit or a package?
I call it kit.
Okay.
Should it be called package?
One thing I will tell you is that when you start to move into bigger shows, you should not call it a kit. Okay. You should refer to it as a sound package, because at that point you would be considered a vendor. You would say, I'm going to be a vendor for the show. I'm not just somebody that comes in. If you were paid a kit, for example, they're going to do paperwork on you differently. And if you look at the paperwork for a kit, if something breaks, they're not technically responsible because they're paying you a kit rental that's supposed to include wear and tear. But if you're a vendor, just like it would be if you were to rent from a big rental house or someplace, if you were to rent gear from an actual vendor, that's going to be considered as part of their COI. So that would be, your equipment would be insured by the production. So let me ask you, if you loaded up your kit onto a trailer for a show, and that trailer were stolen over the weekend, you would be responsible for replacing your kit if it was, paid as a kit rental, even though your entire kit would be stolen. Now, as part of a kit, you're supposed to give a value for that kit. And so you're supposed to say, I have this value, this value, this value. A lot of productions now are starting to look at things. And if you just say the very minimum kit, I have a boom and a pair of headphones, they're going to say, you're not worth $30 a day as a for a 10-month long show or a 7-month long show. I'm not going to pay you that. It's going to, every 2 months pay you for a boom pole or whatever. They're not going to do that. So there's caps put on a lot of kits this day and age, where I think it's like 30 or 40% of the value of your entire kit. So if you're someone like me and you have a completely insane kit full of stuff that you've developed, I have 9 different boom poles and an articulated segment. I have all these microphones and I have things. When I put my kit on something, I will, first of all, I'll scratch through the line that says I'm not responsible for my own damages. I'm responsible for my own damages. I'll scratch through that line. And so if they try to give you digital paperwork, start paperwork, you may say, oh, this is awesome. I can now just type in my name and it will populate through all the start paperwork. And all I have to do is say, yes, I agree. Digital signature, digital signature, digital signature, but you can't scratch out anything. Mm-hmm. So that's one little way that they might get you on digital signatures. But if you scratch out that line that says that anything that I damage of my kit or is lost, I have to replace, and production isn't responsible, you can scratch that out. Now, productions may kick that back, and you might have a UPM or a producer come back and say, why'd you scratch this out? You can't do that. Yeah, I can. And then I've actually had a UPM come in, and I've had this happen before, where they've said, you can't just scratch out a line you disagree with. Yeah, I can. If I disagree with it, I'm going to sign it. But and then I had them say, so why do you think I should not pay you? If I'm paying you a kit rental, then why do you think that wear and tear is something that you shouldn't cover? I'm like, oh no, wear and tear is something I will cover. But if my gear is on a trailer and your transpo driver leaves it in an unsafe area that I'd never approved of, and that vehicle is stolen, you're going to do an insurance claim on the entire sound package, the sound trailer and everything. And because I've signed the paper that says I'm liable to cover my own loss and damages, I'm not going to potentially get that money. So I will sign, if you want me to sign a separate document that says I am responsible for any wear and tear on my gear, that's fine. If you want to even extend it to a certain amount of of potential damages that were related to wear and tear, something like that. But I've been on a show before. I've been on show the very first day. I ended up using a QP480 that I bought on consignment from True Audio. This is like 10 years ago or something like that. I bought this pole the very first day, the very first morning I was on set. I was doing the pilot of a television show called Red Band Society. And we were out there on location, and I think it was in the 10 o'clock hour, and we got there at 7 a.m. So we're like 3.5 hours into our day. And I was extending out the pole. We had a Zeppelin with a Neumann KMR 82 on the end with a full Zeppelin because it was windy. That thing was heavy. And as I was extending it, a camera operator decided he was going to run past me to adjust a background person on the other side. And when he hit the end of the pole, which caused it to hit the side of my body and made me go, boom. When that happened, it snapped a small segment of that boom pole. I was doing this pilot for 8 days. They would not pay me a kit rental. So what I did is I added the value of my entire sound kit, my kit, to my sound mixer's sound package. So that way it would be covered by insurance. And so at that point I said, well, this segment's going to have to be replaced. And they said, and there was no denying it because all the producers and everybody was there and they saw it. You even heard when that happened, you heard this, ooh, go across set. And I said, okay, well, luckily I had my caddy right there. I said, give me 1 second here. Let me change out microphones and swapped booms, and we were still rolling at the time. Yeah. But that was one of those things that I turned around, and that particular 480 that I bought, the QP 480, was the old style that was black, like the QS model ambience. And so I looked at that, and that's the reason I bought it, because I like the old design versus the cross weave design now. And so when they said to me, well, can you get a segment for that pole? I said, they're made differently now. So and so production said, so what do we need to do? I said, you're going to have to replace the pole. So I made the production actually buy me the replacement of that pole, which was a QSM, an ambient QSM. And so they bought me that pole. And then I contacted Redding and I said, how much for this small segment of a QSM? And they said, oh, it's going to be $200. I said, cool. And I replaced that segment myself. And that was me paying myself for a kit rental on that show by getting $1,000 some odd boom pole or something like that for the 8 days of work I was there because they did not want to pay me a kit rental. So yet again, production stepping over dollars to pick up dimes. And, you know, you got to play by the rules.
Yeah, understood. And you got to be quick. So here, I have a question though. While we're talking about boom poles, and
Sure.
I know you're an ambient fan.
Yes.
Tell me, what is it that's special about ambient poles? So I boom with, I've got a K-Tech pole. I've worked with some other poles. I've played, I've touched an ambient pole at NAB, but I've never actually boomed with one, on an actual job. So tell me what's special about them.
I will tell you, every single there is a what I always tell people is it is a tool you use. It is something you have to like the way it works and how it works. Mm-hmm. Depending on a bunch of factors is going to be how you find your boom pole. Now you may say, I'm just going to have to buy one and hope and pray it works. And then you get used to it because you might not have the ability to try out multiple poles. Mm-hmm. So K-Tech, first of all, is and K-Tech and Loon, I believe, are the two big numbers. And I think Pro Sound Corporation, PSC, I believe they're also based out of the United States. VDB, I believe, is in France. Panamic is in the UK. No, VDB is German. And so is Ambient. Maybe VDB. Yes, Vandenberg, I believe. Yeah. So, but what you'll have is every single brand of boom is made a little bit differently. It could have more segments or less segments. K-Tech classic poles will have 5 segments. Ambient poles, as a general rule, until the Series 5, which was announced earlier this year and is just starting to now make it into stores, is a 5 segment line. But it's always had on the QP and QS line, it's always had 4 segments. But the big thing is, ambients are very, very stiff, very unforgiving. If you snap it, it will snap and it will pretty much go like this. And it might bounce a little bit, but then level exactly where you want it to be. If you move, it will move. If I snap between 2 people, back and forth between 2 people, it's not going to go bounce back and forth and wobble. Okay. K-Techs have more bend in them, more bow.
They do.
And depending on the microphone and the Zeppelin that you put on the end of it, it will weigh down differently.
Yep. And now, it has that kind of that flexible feel to it.
Right. Definitely. It's technically graphite. And as I understand it, the difference between carbon fiber and graphite is if you have carbon fiber and you were to compress it and then heat it while compressed in excess of 2200 degrees Fahrenheit for over, 6 hours, something like that. If it's over 2200 degrees for that duration, it weakens a little bit and it becomes more It doesn't weaken, I guess that's the wrong word. It becomes more flexible and a little more less and more springy. If it's heated and compressed at less than 2200 degrees, then it remains carbon fiber. Now, ambients are very, very stiff. Panamics are the same exact way. They're very, very stiff. But ambients also, the thin segment is extremely small. I mean, it's like this thin. But the cell walls, the walls, the thickness of each segment is 1.5 millimeters. So as it starts to get bigger, there's only 4 segments also. So there's less to extend. Now, that does mean that a fully collapsed QP 4140 or a QS is going to be about this tall when I'm standing up. I mean, to you, it'd be like, belly button. But personally, that works well for me. If I snap, I want that pole to go exactly where I want it. Now, keep in mind also, I have martial arts training. So I used bow staffs in my martial art training. And so I understand how to pull and push at the same time. I understand how to snap them. And part of the development of me being a boom operator is me figuring out ways of using the boom pole in a similar way to the bow staff. Okay. And so when I snap it someplace, I know where I want it to stop and I don't want it to wobble around. Now, the more flexible poles like K-Techs, if I'm doing a walk and talk and the pole is extended out, let's say 16 feet, an ambient, if it's relatively straight like this, and let's say this is your Zeppelin. If you walk, it is doing this number.
Yep. Because
that pole is flexing very little. A K-Tech, on the other hand, on a walk and talk, will stay more, and the pole will bounce more like this because it is now. It's not going to be exactly perfectly straight, but it's going to absorb some of that. Yeah, it does absorb some of that. Me personally, I like to snap a pole and have it go exactly where I want it to. So there's advantages and disadvantages of both. K-Tech's customer service is completely awesome and stellar. I don't know if you've ever sent anything in for work.
Haven't had to, thankfully. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
If you ever have a boom operator, though, that is pulling an actor through a door who then closes the door on the other side of them, and that boom operator hits a wall and the pole gets stuck, and then the person closes on the door and that segment breaks, if you call up K-Tech, their customer service is so good. They're like, well, we got to fix that pole. We got to make sure it's going to be good. Even if it's out of warranty, I've heard of K-Tech replacing entire segments. And if you want that thing tweaked back to factory specs and you want it to be, I forgot the maintenance. It's like $125. You can send it every couple of years and they will completely take it apart, clean it, do everything they need to. If there's a part or a segment even that needs replacing, they'll just swap it out. They'll make that pole basically a brand new, completely back to factory specs pole for the cleaning fee of $125. And then they'll send it back out to you. Yeah. And so that is one of those things. I used to, when David Fisk used to work at K-Tech, I used to joke with him and I said, dude, your customer service is so awesome that if I were to take a brand new K-Tech boom and I slammed you over the head with it and broke that thing, you would actually fully replace the pole to make sure it was back to its factory specs. You would still sue the living crap out of me because you're not an idiot, but you would at least make sure that I was taken care of as a K-Tech customer.
Yes. So another thing then, all ambient poles have straight cables, or do any of them, they don't, there's not room for a coiled cable, is there?
Well, it depends on the series.
Okay.
If you're talking about the ambient QP 4140 or 480 or the discontinued 420, 430, 440 series, then the whole entire QP line, which you can tell by the little purple, indicator on the end of the, it's over there. But you can tell because right up next to where the 3816 thread is at the top, there's a little purple, a little disc there. That's an indicator of a QP pole.
Okay.
If you were to have an old school QP pole or a QS pole, then it is just for straight cables or externally wrapping. You cannot put a coiled cable through it. But if you have a legacy QS or a current QSX pole, then it has more segments in there. The thinner, it has 1 millimeter walls as opposed to a 1.5 millimeter wall. And at that point, the diameter is thick enough for you to put a cable through. Now, the new QP quick pole line, which is the Series 5 that has been announced, and I think it's just now starting to work its way out to vendors this week. I take that back. The QP 5150 is now starting to that's the really long pole, the 22, 23 foot pole. But the others in the QP line, Series 5s, those have started to make their way to the sound vendors if you're interested. Now, they have changed things up a little bit. They now have an internal coiled cable, if you would like that, or an internal straight cable as an option that you can simply take the tip off of the pole, drop the cable through there, and then it has I think it's a TA5 or a TA3 little thing that will plug back into the section. So that way, if you have an internally coiled cable, you can plug it in there. So it allows you to quickly change out cables if you need to without having to solder it inside of a cable, inside of the pole.
Okay. But you're a straight cable guy, right?
As a rule, yes. Lately, I've been doing a lot more with the transmitters at the end of the boom. And so I have, like I mentioned, 9 different ambient booms. So I have them cabled for different things. I have the ones that I usually use for the sound mixer I'm working with right now with the A10 system. Those are not cabled booms. The cables, like if Michael Wynn's still in here, when I was working with him, I had an MM1 on my belt, and then I would run that through a straight cable up to the end of the boom. So I also do have a coiled cabled boom, which I will use, even though people always say you shouldn't use a coiled cable boom. If it's raining, you should use a straight cable. I always use it in the rain. And the reason why is because if you were to take an internal straight cable, you know that because it's open in a section, you are basically dropping a cable on the ground and any dirt and debris is going up into the pole. Well, ambients self-clean to a certain degree. They have a system that self-cleans. but not all brands do that. So you will gunk up the inside of your boom pole real quickly. But if you have an internal coiled cable, then it is basically secured. It's more locked in place. Now, as long as you know how to properly protect against moisture and rain being part of that, then I don't see an issue ever really with using a internal coiled cable boom.
Okay.
So
okay, let's go see what the people have to say.
So yeah, here's Panoramic pole in combination with a Sonella Cozy. So RZO is a fan of that combination, and I'll tell you, it is a great combination. Personally, I don't like the Panoramic poles, and I have used them before. People are, well, if you don't like them, you've obviously never used them. Yeah, I have. I've worked for mixers before, and I've worked for utilities before that have brought in their Panoramic poles. The thing I don't like about them, first of all, is the sections are thicker, and I like them thinner, like the ambience, but also that outer nylon coating. I understand that it keeps your hands, warmer when it's cold outside. I understand that it's a better for grip. But personally, if I slide my hand, which I do a lot of, if I slide my hand up and down, it really burns. And I understand it's probably one of those things that your hands would get used to over time. But personally, I just don't like it. And also the particular one of those Panoramic poles I used, it had a little nick in the nylon. And if you can imagine, the nylon weaving like this, a couple of little threads sticking up, that's sharp. And so it kept stabbing my finger. And so that was something I told him. I said, dude, you have all these little bitty spiky bits on there. Take a lighter to it. Just quickly wave it around there and ravel it into the thing. But those are a couple of things I don't like about the Panoramic poles. I know a lot. I'm very much in the minority there. I know most people that have tried them love them, especially if you use some sort of a transmitter on the end of it, because it doesn't bow very much. It's a thicker segment. It's got a lot of little creature comforts, that people usually like. But me, I can't get away from the ambience, man. I love ambient booms.
Got me convinced. I think I'll try I'll try one. Try an ambient next time.
Well, I tell you, man, I should almost send you one and let you play with one of the ones that I've wired up and connected.
I want you ready as soon as production opens. I want you out there. But
I have 9 ambient booms, dude. I have some that I don't use that I'm not going to use for a while. But I'm a big believer to have backups, though. That's one of the reasons why I have multiples. Like every single pole I have is a backup of something, except for my ambient QP 6200. Now, if you're not familiar with the nomenclature of ambience, for example, you look at it and the QP, QS, QL, QX, QSX, whatever it happens to be, is the series. But then the next number that you run into is the number of segments. So on a QP 4140, it is 4 segments. And then the 140 is 140 centimeters in length when the pole is already collapsed. It's collapsed all the way.
The collapse. Okay, the collapsed length.
Yes, so that's how many centimeters it is when it's all the way collapsed. Now that's before you add something like the QAEST or QPSCM flow through, for example, or one of the modular pieces like that. Now K-Techs are different. K-Techs, are you familiar with the nomenclature on those?
I think so. Yeah. Well, I think so.
How about a refresher in case anybody's out there?
Better do it. Better do it. Actually,
so
I've got the keg one. So I've got one of the Avalon poles. Well, I've got 2 Avalon poles. I've got the keg 150 CCR.
Okay, what is the 150?
I believe the 150 is it's the length. I thought.
What measurement though?
I thought feet. 15 feet is what I thought. No.
That's actually, it's close, but it's not exactly right. 150 is how many inches it is if it's all the way open.
Okay.
If it's all the way extended. So that's number of inches.
Okay.
So 150 divided by 12 is, Alexa, what's 150 divided by 12? 12.5. So it's a 12 and a half foot pole.
Yep.
So, you did it a better way than asking the FBI monitoring device over there to, I'm such a geek with that.
They're onto you. They're onto you, buddy.
I've said this so many times. I don't say anything interesting. If the FBI really wants to listen in to anything I say in this room, watch sound speeds. Just watch my videos. You'll hear everything I say on sound speeds.
Right.
And
Right.
anything else that I say in here is most likely going to either be in Discord or it's going to be in a live stream. So
Yeah.
I'm not really saying anything all that interesting. I mean, occasionally I'll slam a toe into something and I'll say, I'll
Say a bad word.
I'll say some colorful language, but there's nothing really
Yeah.
that they would really care about.
I
I'm
don't think
boring.
you're not pulling a lot of punches. I
I'm
think you are what you are.
Yeah.
What everyone sees.
They have no interest in me. My first poll was an aluminum road one, and then I found an old carbon ambient pole at a garage sale. Oh wow! Had to carry around lubricant spray, but the pros still outweigh the cons. I'll tell you, I have a video called "A Simple Ambient Repair." If you've never done a full repair of that pole and completely souped it back up and set it back to factory specs, I would say check out that video because I talk about the fact that you can actually order from Redding. If you contact Redding Audio, I believe they're in Massachusetts. I believe maybe it's Connecticut, one of those places up there. But if you contact them and ask them for, they may be a charge to it, but you can ask them for a kit that includes some of the ambient Velcro and some of the ambient knuckle grease. What that will allow you to do is take apart them. It will allow you to, and I talk about the cleaning supplies and stuff that I use in that video as well, and my cleaning methods. And I talk about how to do the repair and how to basically soup the thing back up, where to apply the ambient knuckle grease, how to do everything. So it's a cool video, PJ. You might want to check that out. Oh man. So did he ever tell us if I pronounced it right? I mean, he said over here, yeah, but I don't know if that's a yeah, I said it right or not. So I'm just going to call him Rado unless he tells me otherwise. But he says he's not a fan of K-Tech booms.
Fair enough.
A lot of better alternatives out there. And you know what? I tell people it's important for you to find one that you like because your hands may be oilier or greasy or dry, whatever the case may be. You may, if you touch, if I touch a VDB pole, one of the newer ones, those things have a high shine to them. My hands stick like crazy to them, and it makes a sliding sound like if you're drinking through a straw and you slide your finger up and down a straw, it makes that kind of a sound. If you use the stock cables, I don't like that.
Yeah.
The cable I use with my ambient booms are the same kind of cables that I make, the same kind of XLRs that I use, which, by the way, if you're in this stream and you're interested in me making you an XLR, watch the video I just released. And it's talking about the fact that I'm actually selling for a limited time for this month only XLR cables that I hand make my way. Now, I wire up all of my ambient booms that way. And I've never had a failure from them, unless it's like, a connector gets wet or something like that because it was dropped in water and then you instantly take it and you connect it up. Then any connector is going to fail in that circumstance. Mm-hmm. But everybody has different things about poles you like. Me personally, I like having less segments. So like the 4-segment booms, I don't like to have 6 segments like VDBs have, or some of the K-Tech ones have 6 segments. I don't like the K-Tech, how you have to, the locks, for example, are very, very, you have to sometimes take it around like 1.5 times or something like that on some of the older ones in order to release it. And it doesn't really lock as well. Now I know that's probably something that's a maintenance thing, but with ambience, you just go like this. They technically a quarter of a turn, but it's like an eighth of a turn for my poles because I keep them well maintained. And so you just go like this and it completely loosens up and slides in and out. And remember, it also self cleans. But then I do this number and you're like, it will not go back in because it's locked that well. So every single brand, and some brands are in the middle. PSC poles have a combination of the flex of a K-Tech, and they have more rigidity. Loon poles, which were cream of the crop until Don Wetzel died and the company basically folded a couple of years ago. Those poles are works of art. Don had, I believe, like 4 different trademarks or patents, I should say, on those poles. Don Wetzel was one of the people that helped to create the K-Tech line when it first came out. And then he went on and started doing his own thing. He would have more segments, and every single one of his segments of Loon Boom had a different combination of strength of fibers of carbon fiber. So that way each segment was made the same thickness, which a combination of, very, very light little bitty, fibers, but they were different strengths. So the smaller segments would not need to have the same thickness and strength of the bigger segments. And so he played with that balance. He also had a wing that would come off the bottom and allow a right angle. So that way you could put a loom boom straight on the ground and it's not going to mess up your connector if you wanted to have it exit out the side. So loons were amazing. And if you can get a loon boom, their cables, for example, their coiled cables were completely stellar. I believe it even had, I think it was air that was injected into the outer rubber casing of it to help it to, I'm trying to remember what Don said to me years ago, but I think he said that it had air in it, which added an extra layer of kind of absorbency and protection to it, if memory serves. I got to look that up again because I remember it was this coiled cables. I said, wow, that's really, and unlike most cables that only will stretch out, a coiled cable will stretch out technically 4 times the length without being overpulled, which means that on a 5-section boom pole, it could technically overstretch a little bit. Theirs were designed to go up to 5 coils and very easily and then snap back every single time. But those looms were amazing. European use used to do straight outside cable mostly. Coiled cable is a very American thing. And before the special quiet loon boom cable, I was not a fan of it. I have been no cable for a long time. Yeah, I know a lot of Europeans and like even in the northeastern United States for a while, they didn't even always use headphones. Many of the pictures you see online of boom operators still externally wrap their booms. And that's a very common thing to do. You can very easily do that. There's even clips now that I've seen sold. So that way, if you externally wrap your boom, you could just take the cable and clip it onto the end of your boom. So that way you can still slide your hands in and out. I've never liked externally wrapped boom cables though. I've just not been a fan of it.
Same.
There is one exception, and that is going to be in my next video that I release. Okay. One exception.
Little tease there.
Little tease. Pandemic. I was hearing pandemic. Yeah. And, I've heard some people say Panamic. I've heard some people say Pandemic. If you ever call them up, they'll say, what is it? What do they say? It's not Canopus, but it's something very similar. It's like they don't even answer saying Pandemic because that's just their line of boom poles. They make the mini, midi, and the maxi, which technically I believe you can take a mini and you can add another segment on the outside of it. It becomes a midi, and you add another segment on the outside, it becomes a maxi. So I said your Alexa device off also. That was one of the funny things I remember a long time ago. There was a commercial. I don't know if you remember this, Curtis. It was probably 5 years ago. There was a commercial where they were trying to show how awesome Siri is. And so the commercial in the commercial, it said, "Hey Siri, set a timer for 5 minutes." And people would be going to sleep at their, and dozing off. And then all of a sudden their phone would go off and they're like, "Why is this alarm going off?" And they look at it and they're like, "Stop." And then they'd be watching TV and then they doze off again. And then all of a sudden they say, "Why is my alarm going off? What's wrong with my phone?" So it ended up being this big thing for a while because people would be watching television and not realize that their own phones were setting a timer because of the commercial. It's awesome. Bandrew on his BSP, he will usually spell out Alexa to not set off anybody's Amazon echoes.
He's such a considerate guy.
Yeah, he's a little too considerate for my taste. I was like, come on, dude, just set off everybody's. Say Alexa, Siri, hey Google, and then say your thing. Oh, ignore the cancel. It was I saw it light up and it's like, no, cancel. So a mixer I worked with once had an unbranded pole and it was beautiful. The knuckles weren't twist locking. They latched open and shut. I want to find one so badly.
Interesting.
Latched open and closed.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like that.
That's probably something that was a monopod. Could it have been? Because I know Gitzo makes a boom pole, but it started as a monopod. And if you look at their monopods versus their boom poles, it's basically the exact same thing with a couple of slight modifications. They take the quarter 20 off the end. They add a 3/8/16. They change the knuckle ever so slightly. They change the design of the slip. They make it so that way it can take an internal cable. And they basically say, "Oh, look, amazing. We have a boom pole now."
Did Really Right Stuff do the same thing? I got to do those. I wasn't they had some thoughtful features on them, but they were using the exact same carbon fiber as their tripods, and I felt like it was transferring a lot of noise. A lot of noise.
Yeah. I don't know. How are they doing right now?
I don't know.
I found that video of yours. It was recommended as to watch. I was like, you know what? I haven't seen that video in a while. But then I said, you know what? I remember seeing it before. I remember talking to you about that poll afterwards.
Yeah.
I called them and asked them if they would like to send it to a boom operator. They were not interested in sending it to me. The
Interesting.
person I spoke to on the phone. Now, it could be that I had the wrong person, but I remember saying, hey, I'm a boom operator and I have a YouTube channel. If you want to send it to me, I'll gladly test it. And they're like, oh, okay. I'll take your information down. When I called back up and like, yeah, okay. We're, you know, I'll write your information down. I'm like, okay, never mind. I'm not going to chase you. And so that's after a while I said,
It's
you know
okay.
what?
It's okay.
You know, contact me if you want my assistance with something aside from that.
I think it would get slaughtered by you. They did a few, you know, the things that they did that were thoughtful but didn't work really well. Oh, there we go. Another zip fizz. On the smaller pole, at least, it was an internal coiled cable, and it had the little kind of plastic things weaved into the cable so that it wouldn't hit against the side of the pole when you cue really quickly.
Yeah.
But then it got all bound up when you tried to collapse the pole, so it just wasn't executed very well. And again, whatever, I don't know what the deal is with the carbon fiber.
That would have just been on the little segment though, right? Just the small segment?
I don't know. I think actually if you open it up, they had those tabs all the way down the entire coiled cable. Yeah.
Oh, coiled cable.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I do.
It didn't work out well. So
now I could imagine that being something that somebody would say would come in handy as you know, to keep the segments only stretching as much as each segment should go.
Well,
without flipping upon itself.
No, I don't think it was for that so much as it just to keep the internal cable from hitting the inside of the pole when you cued quickly.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
but
problem
then you still have it roll. You still have it rock a little bit though, right?
Yeah, I know.
And then the whole cable itself would probably transfer because you're locking it to the outside of the pole.
It wasn't. It was just. It wasn't actually locked to the outside of the pole. It was just to hold it in place. So those tabs would slide internally inside the pole as you extended it, in theory at least. But what I found is they seemed to get bound up at the knuckles as you would extend the pole. Or actually, it actually didn't happen so much when you're extending the pole, but as you went to go to collapse it, it felt like you would come to a knuckle and they would just kind of get stuck there. And so you couldn't, it would just jam up.
Did you show that in your video?
No, because I didn't realize it until after, because I think I shot the video before I did the job. And
gotcha.
we were actually shooting inside of a tent, like an army tent, and so I needed a short pole, and so I ended up using the short one more than I thought. I thought I was going to end up using the longer one before I knew more of the details of the production, but anyway, I will not be buying one.
Yeah. I think Ambient's going to be sending me one of their Series 5. I requested the QP 5150, which is their longest pole. Because I told them I love your QP and your QS line. I told them, I said, I looked at it and I said, there's some really cool things about the Series 5 that I really like, but the 5 segments, that's the one thing that I like, having less segments. And they said, yeah, but then when I thought about it, I said, you know what? I have a QS inside of a QP 150, QP 120 extension. That's how I have a 5-section boom that goes out to 23 feet. And so I suddenly said, you know what? That could be where a Series 5 could replace it. So I said that would give me an opportunity to perhaps change it up. Use a Series 5. That would be something that I would actually get because I use that pole maybe a few times a year, but it's a really cool pole, and I really like that combination. It's heavy and it's thick because I think the outside of it, you add another segment on the outside of a boom thickness that I like.
Bigger.
The thing gets heavy also, but the Series 5, they're going to be, I believe, sending me the 5150 if they can work it out. They're not used to sending, they're not Rode. They don't send out, oh, you take a microphone and you take a microphone and you have 3 and you take a whole kit. They don't do that. They're trying to work it out because their structure is one that they sell the things they use. So they're, I think, they know that when I first bought a QX pole, they changed from the QL pole line to the QX, and I looked at buying, and I bought a QX years ago. And then I looked at it and I shook my head after using it for a day on a movie called Kill the Messenger. And I shook my head at it and said, no, this is not an ambient feeling pole. So I actually called them in Germany the next day before work. And I went through a laundry list of, why did you do this? Why does it knuckle this way? And this, and I was talking to my contact there, who now works at Rycote, which when he changed from ambient over to Rycote, he's been a really good contact of mine over there. But I contacted him. Timo is his name. And I said, Timo, why did you do the knuckles this way? Why didn't you do them the same way you did on the QL? He's like, well, we have our reasons. And I'm like, what are those reasons? And I was like, pushed it really hard. And I gave him this laundry list. I said, you need to do this. You need to do this. And he's like, okay, well, I did take your information to heart. And I was I realized that I woke up in the morning and I was a little fired up. And I called him and I was like, geez, I was probably a little bit rude to him. But what was a funny story about that is I ended up saying it should be this way. And then one of my friends who's a camera operator happened to have a QX 5130. And I worked with him on something and he's like, yeah, I happen to have this pole. Do you have any use for it? Cause I'd be interested in selling it. I'm like, well, sure. I how much are you looking for it? And he's like, well, I used it 1 day or I used it 2 days for about 3 hours of interviews each day. Okay. How long ago was that? About 3 years ago. So the warranty is no longer valid. Probably not interested then because it also is the line that I don't normally touch. The next year I worked with him on the same project and he again said, hey, I have a boom pole. I said, yeah, the QX 5130. And he said, yeah. And I said, you still haven't sold it? He said, no, I haven't sold it. Do you have any interest? And I said, not at the price you're wanting for it. And he said, but it's brand new. I said, it doesn't have the factory warranty on it. I said, if you were to sell it for $50 less than a brand new pole, it's got to have the factory warranty on it. And anyway, I talked him down a little bit on that. He had to talk to someone who I think technically owned it because it was paid for by the show. And he ended up selling it to me. I then went kind of crazy because the cabling options on the 5100 versus the 5130 is a little bit different. So I contacted Gotham Sound. I talked to Dan and I said, I'd like to have this and this and this and this cable and this. So basically we came up with a combination of 4 different parts that can make it the way I wanted it to be because I don't like the flow through design on the QX poles. And he ended up saying, okay, cool. Now you got your pole in. I was like, awesome. And then before I could come and pick it up, there was another boom operator in town that actually bought that exact combination and had seen that pole in one of the classes I taught and asked them for that combination. But because that was his primary pole, they asked me, would you mind if we gave him your cable and stuff and then just swapped it? I said, no, by all means. I love that guy. So I said, by all means. Marcus, who was in one of my live streams about a month or two ago, he was in the live stream with Rachel. Love Marcus. So I said, yeah, by all means, give it to him. And then they reordered me the stuff. The day I finally picked up that boom, when it was finally ready, I drove home, got caught in rush hour traffic. The second I got home and inside my house, I brought up my laptop. I looked and Ambient was announcing the new QXS series. And I said, wait a second. Hold on a second. Let me look at this. And it was the cables. I said it was the knuckles the way I said they should use it. It was the segments like the way that I liked it. It was everything the way I had said, except like one little minor difference. And I said, this is what I want. So I turned around and took that pole I just picked up, never once used, and listed it for sale. And I actually sold it to a friend for practically half the price because he's a good guy and he needed a deal on a good boom pole. And so that was something that I did. And then I turned around and I bought the first QXS 5130. And then I was like, I want the same exact cable configuration we just got through doing again. And they're like, okay, Alan. So that's very much an Alan thing to do. Especially for a pole that I think I've only used like 4 times in the past few years.
Yeah.
So
Well, you're ready. I a couple questions then. Well, actually, we should see what.
unfortunately, money was a factor in boom pole selection. When I was starting
Yeah.
out, I came across an affordable K-Tech, and I just so used to K-Tech poles, but by no means am I opposed to a different brand. Let me point out something to you. If you're interested in a first-time boom pole buy, one of the best websites I found with a consignment area is True Audios. If you go to trueaudio.com, that's TREW audio.com, look in their consignment area, which is their used section. They have a whole bunch of booms, and they have a whole bunch of different store locations too, including Canada. So, and they will go in and out of, of consignment a lot because people will buy it. They probably have the best consignment section because as soon as they get a piece of gear in, they'll take pictures of it, list it online. And if you say, hey, I'm interested in buying this, they'll say, okay. And if you want to negotiate on price, what they'll do is they'll take your suggestion, they'll turn around and call the person that's selling it and say, are you willing to part with it for this price? And if they say yes, then you got yourself a deal. They may come back with a counter offer though. And then there's going to be a final, price. And then they do get a commission. I don't remember what that is. But then you would have to pay to transfer that pole from one place to another or whatever. But you can find some really good deals on the True Audio website. And I love True Audio's consignment department because they are very quick to get stuff into the consignment sections, and they have a really good system for it. Probably the best out there in the pro sound world. So if you're interested in
like
boom
those
pole,
guys.
check it out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
They're good to work with.
Yeah.
I work a lot with Gotham and True.
Yeah.
I bought my sound cart, just a sound cart mini over at True.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my other stuff over at Gotham. It's good to get to know those people because they can help you out a lot of like tight spots too.
Do you do Gotham in New York?
I don't know. I just call Gotham and they just transfer me to whoever I'm supposed to be transferred to. I don't know who it is.
Is it a 404 number or a 212?
I don't remember. Whatever's on the website.
Yeah.
212 is the New York number, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 404 is Atlanta. And that was actually one of the things that I thought was really funny is when I stopped calling New York, I had friends up there. I would call them, and when we got the Gotham in Atlanta, I was like, okay, well, I made friends here. Occasionally, I used to call up New York just to talk to people. I'm still friends with Peter Schneider, one of the owners.
Yeah.
And Jim, they're great. Yeah. Love them. Actually, I'll give you the scoop here on something that technically is not ready to be announced just yet, but I don't see it's not a bad thing. It's nothing that is a bad thing at all. It's actually a very good thing. At the beginning of the COVID pandemic, I released on the very first day that video about the boom swinger and the boom buddy. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I was reaching out to sound vendors, everything from the audio department in Gotham Sound to True Audio and TAI. And no one was willing to take on any new inventory because the industry was shutting down. They had no idea how long it would be sitting there. And I understand that. Mm-hmm. But I did catch word about a week ago that Gotham Sound has placed an order for some boom swingers and some boom buddies from Fleetwood Films in Wales. So if you saw my video about the boom swinger and the boom buddy and did not have a chance to get one, if you call up Gotham Sound and say you were interested in either one of those, they can sell you one. I did have a limited supply of them. As soon as I first, and I'm exactly true in that video where I said, as soon as I tried it out and used it for one setup, used it for one day, I turned around and ordered 15 of them from Fleetwood in Wales. And I wanted to be able to offer them at cost to students in the classes I teach, because I knew instantly I was going to be incorporating them into the classes I was teaching, especially the boom classes. And then when I did the video, I had a few left because, I was interested in passing that on to people who were viewers. But then once I ran out, I said, okay, I'm out of them now. And occasionally I've been contacted by a sound vendor and said, hey, do you still have any of those? I got a call and they said that it's the thing they saw in your video. No, sorry. If you missed the opportunity to get either a boom buddy or a boom swinger, though, they are going to be, as soon as they get through customs and finally work their way to New York, I believe they're going to be in New York, Gotham Sound. So definitely call them if you are interested and go ahead and place your order. That way you will get one as soon as they arrive. I will be officially making that announcement as soon as Peter contacts me and says, by the way, the Eagle has landed. And I'll say, okay, awesome. and you'll hear an official mention of it on my channel. But that is something that if you missed the opportunity before, you're going to have that opportunity now because Gotham Sound I know is starting to buy them.
Good stuff. I'm told that my levels are low.
Your levels are low. I know you were breaking up a little bit at the beginning of the video.
How about now?
Levels are fine to me.
Okay. I'm running. Okay. Let's see how we go.
I know whenever Bandrew's in a live stream, I always try to convince him to I always say, you're about 60 dB too hot. You need to take it way lower. Let's see. Have you guys found StreamYard is the best way for this kind of live stream? I mean, it's really cool.
It's easy, it's reliable, but it's not the highest quality.
Now,
where are the audio meters? Where are the audio meters?
Yeah, there aren't any audio meters. They're individual audio meters down next to our pictures down there that, you know, you can bring someone in or out. There's the little 3 dots. Those little 3 dots, I believe, are supposed to be audio meters. At least they move. They used to move. They don't now. But if you happen to be interested in the live stream, I was going to be doing with Petrushka Mirswa last week. We ended up having an issue there. It ended up, StreamYard was not cooperating. If you notice, the stream was supposed to start at like 3 p.m. and then I pushed it back to 3:15, then 3:30, then 3:35, then 3:45, then I canceled it. We were not able to get it to work. On her end, her computers were fine. It was set up fine. It would work fine through, you know, other programs, but not through StreamYard. And before we finished, she was texting me and saying, I can see you. You could see me. I mean, I could see her and she could see me. We got that part fixed, but just audio wasn't working. And I said, that's not going to work. If we tried to do the audio, there would have been a couple seconds delay or something like that. So we're like, no, you're going to have to just call it there.
Yeah.
But yeah, StreamYard is just something that Curtis ended up putting together the Podcastage, Booth Junkie, and SoundSpeed's 4-way live stream a few months ago. Check out his channel if you, I think it was on his main channel. Well, not on your main channel?
It was on the main channel. Yep.
Yeah. So there was that video where he interviewed us all in one big live stream.
Hollywood Squares.
Yeah, Hollywood Squares, and it was on StreamYard, and I think that it worked out great for us. It's not like Google Hangouts used to be, that if you ever did a live stream, you would have to have all the plugins just right, and then you would send a link, and they're like, I can't get in there. It says I need to upgrade my, you know, and you're like, oh geez, it was really a mess.
It's pretty straight. It's pretty good. There's another one. So down in the chat here, Bangs Naughty Bit says Riverside.fm is better. I think yes, quality wise, in terms you get a higher resolution video, and they use I can't remember the name of the codec. It was originally made for recording a podcast, but you can also stream. The only problem is, unless they've changed it recently, you couldn't do this kind of scenario where we have, you know, where we're sharing the screen really well. It keeps it in a 16:9 ratio for each of, more like that. And they didn't have the means to bring up the chat either, I don't believe. So they're kind of getting started, but they could be a really good service at some point.
Well, StreamYard's actually changed and doing some cool things. We have a private chat on the right-hand side. If I wanted to actually pay for the service, I could remove the little duck with the headphones on up there. And I could actually change that out and stuff. I just don't want to pay the money. And I believe it's like 20 hours of free streaming services that you have per month with this. And one of the cool things about StreamYard is they just got through in the past couple of weeks. I think it's even been in the past week. They've made it so that way you can actually change position of people.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
you can, you know, switch us around, and I can make you sick. And and there's different things that you can do. And then, but it's really cool the way it's laid out. And that was something that when Curtis introduced us to that for that stream, I was like, well, geez, that's awesome. And then you said that there's Zencaster has a video beta.
That's worth checking out. Yeah, because they've been doing podcast, the audio part of that for a long time.
They have been. And then StreamYard is the only way I know for this kind of live stream. Yeah. And I like the integration with the chat on the right-hand side. I think that's really cool. It's got a really neat system where you schedule your live stream inside the program. It's very easy. You just email and, or it's just to register. It's just your email address and it verifies it. And then when you log in there, it says, how'd you like to stream this to what services? And you just go through and you just give it, a couple of basic pieces of information from your YouTube or your Twitch or, whatever. And I think it streams to a few different sources. And then all you do is once you schedule the stream, the only thing you cannot do that I found is turn on monetization. So we've had 2 different $5 donations in this stream so far, unless I missed something. And if you wanted to donate, then you could do that now because I turned that on YouTube. I went to YouTube site, went to the live stream, and then turned it on there. It does not have a place inside of the edit stream button here on Streamlabs to do that. You have to turn that on manually from YouTube.
Okay. There's another one that's in development right now that I got to test out an early version of called Stream Voodoo. And they can actually do up to 4K streaming, and the audio quality is very good as well. But they're still working on it. It's not widely available yet. Something to keep an eye on. How you hanging in there? Okay. Which zip fizz are you on? Second one?
Oh, this is still the first one.
Oh,
well,
I came
into it with this one actually opened already.
Okay.
It's so funny how you've turned around. Because when you did the live stream with me before, and I first pulled out the zip fizz, you gasped. It was an actual
context though. That was at that point. It was probably at, I think it was like 11:58 p.m. my time, which means it's 2 hours later your time. And I'm thinking, does this man ever sleep? Because when he's pouring that stuff down his throat right now.
Well, I have a video I have to edit as soon as we're done here.
Okay, well, the good news is I'm fading.
Oh, yeah, that's great news. Totally. I mean, the whole reason why we have 35 people in here now, we've had up to 44 or 43, is because you're here. Usually my live streams, usually I'll see at most about 33 or 34 people. The reason it's gotten up this high as it has is because you're here.
It's teamwork, Alan.
Let's see. What's your favorite food, Curtis? James Brown is asking from the grave.
Well, I think I grew up in Southern Cal near Los Angeles, so Mexican food is really one of my favorites. I do some cooking. My responsibility is cooking Sunday night and Saturday mornings every week for the family. And my specialty is chicken piccata, an Italian dish.
Gotcha.
That's my current favorite. How about you, Alan?
I tell you, it's hard to go wrong with a pizza, but usually if it's not pizza, then it's usually something like nachos.
Okay.
I mean, I love nachos, so right up the same creek there with Curtis. But I mean, I'm the kind of guy that can take that loves a big old huge glob of easy cheese on top of a Ritz cracker.
You're easy.
I am no gourmet. There's only like 40 foods I like, and the rest of it's all junk food. I mean, and that is quite true. So when I'm being good, I actually is you never look at me and be able to tell this, but I actually have an extremely fast metabolism. If I eat complete garbage, then I basically don't really put on weight a whole lot. It'll be very slow. If I eat good, weight falls off of me. It will literally fall off of me. There was about 14 years ago, I believe, it was my county when I lived in a county on the east side of Atlanta. They were doing a Biggest Loser competition it was a benefit to a young boy whose mom was the only single mom. Her dad was not in the picture, and the mom died in a car crash.
Oh, wow. And
so they did a Biggest Loser competition to try to benefit that little boy, to give him some money and stuff. And there was, all kinds of different donations made and things. And there was even prize donations. And it was a 12-week-long competition. The first weigh-in, I believe, was in January. The last one, I believe, was 12 weeks later, whenever that was, in April. And I joined the competition. My wife said, you should join, because at that point I was putting on weight. And, and so I joined that competition, went back into my martial art training schedule. I was doing like, a very strict eating, very strict diet, working out like crazy. And I had, and they did it by percentage of your start weight, your body weight. And I was 24.9% of my body weight I lost in the course, over the course of that 12 weeks. Because I mean, I got down to like, training, like muscular. I was like fit like you wouldn't believe. And so I won that competition, and it was in the Rockdale newspaper, something like that. If you do a search for Rockdale Biggest Loser Alan Williams, you might find the picture, because it was they asked me to come in to be interviewed for the magazine. They got a couple of quotes wrong, but it was one of those things that I thought was kind of cool. But you'll probably see me in the next, when I start Black Lightning again. I'm not going to be able to go to Crafty and and stuff like I normally, because they're going to be trying to keep you on set more. And at that point, probably in the next week or two, I'm going to have to start getting back into, firm shape and that kind of thing. So you're going to start seeing weight fall off of me again. It's going to be kind of funny. I'll get back into the training schedule. Let's see here. StreamYard makes bringing in a guest trivially easy. Yes, it does.
Yes. You just send them a link.
Yep, send them a link.
Nice.
They pop in. As long as they have access to microphone and webcam, you're good. Locked in is getting boring, and I need a new hobby.
I have not. I'm still trying to build out my actual kit. I actually got I don't think I told you this. I have the SL2 to go with my sound devices 888. So I've got the 2-slot super slot system now.
Very good.
And we're in the process of getting that built out.
What did you load it up with?
2 A10s.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, so it's 4-channel for me. Yeah, I didn't put the 4-channel WYSICOMs in, but
are you going to be doing wireless boom with the A10?
That's the main reason I added this, was so that I have enough channels, because most of my jobs I'm doing 3 wires, and that will give me enough for the wireless boom now.
Technically, there's a way, Discord and OBS do multi-person live streams if you want, completely free. However, it doesn't have all those features. Yeah, I know about that. I know I joined this last Sunday. I joined Kevin on his unscripted channel, and we did a 2.5-hour live stream. I don't think Kevin's still here anymore. He hasn't said anything. Captain Jack is here. Kevin was there in that, or Captain Jack was in that live stream. And so that was one where I think he had a way to make Skype go out over the air, to go out over YouTube.
Yeah, NDI.
NDI. Now, the thing about that was there was a delay in the sound, and sometimes it would synchronize up, sometimes it wouldn't.
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly sure how that works. I think Zoom is probably a more reliable platform for sync, right?
I don't know. I get mixed I don't use Zoom a lot, but I get a lot of questions about, hey, I'm using, and I don't know if that's an A10 Mini thing, but a lot of people with the A10 Mini who are trying to use Zoom are saying that they're good until about 30 minutes in, and then the sync starts to drift.
Really?
I don't know if that's a hardware thing or the service.
I'm looking into different options, because I have that sound utility class coming up. That's that if you're not familiar with it, I'm doing kind of an introductory type overview 101 level look at the sound utility position, what a sound utility needs to know on the very basic level. And I'm going to be doing that on Saturday, September 12th from 2 until 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you are interested, watch the video I've released recently, and it talks about how you can enroll in that. And it's a class I've taught in the real world, and it goes over very well. One of the things I'm doing research on right now, and I was going to pick your brain on this, is how would be a great way to do it where it will be in sync for the audience. I could always do it to just an unlisted YouTube link and send everybody that link. That's the way I'm leaning right now.
Do you need the interaction though? Do you need
that would be the thing. That would be the thing that I would consider doing it in a Zoom type scenario. And then I would just say, mute it unless you have a question. If you have a question, raise your hand and then I'd see it and then I could answer your question. So I'm looking at it from that perspective and thinking about the interaction. I do know there's a question and answer session going to be at the end of the class.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm liking the idea. I mean, if it depends on how big it is, I could just do it in StreamYard and do it to a unlisted, link and then give everybody the link and have people pop up in there. And I could just look at it and show everybody. And then when I'm ready to, just add people in and out as needed.
Yep.
But I'm looking into options there. If anyone has an idea or suggestion, I'm definitely all ears. I need it to be synchronized so that way people are not looking at me, out of sync, talking and stuff for 3 hours.
Exactly. That would be painful for soundies. Ooh.
Even more painful than just looking at me for 3 hours.
No, that's not what I meant.
Let's see here. We have plan to use StreamYard to host a sailboat race with 4 live solo encoders on chase boats. I hope this setup will work. I don't know of anyone who's tested this combination.
You're
that's
the first, Captain.
I hope you make a YouTube video and you tell Kevin, because I would love to see it. I would love to see that.
Yeah. Yep.
There's some cool integration that I know people have done with cable cams on like Super Bowl games and stuff. I mean, the way that those productions just in my lifetime have changed, it's amazing. I mean, you can see, I remember when I was a kid, it was basically like a regular type game and you put up the chyrons and stuff. And then I remember how cool it was when people could draw over the screen.
Yep.
And then I remember how cool it was when all of a sudden, as they were panning, you could see the yard markers on the ground and it would change as it was panning. I was like, that is so cool. And now you have the spider cams and the cable cams and not spiders, but you have all these different cameras all over the place that track and they zoom in on the ball in the air and it follows and it's like all over the place, man. The production,
it's impressive. Yeah.
If you could show people back when we were kids, the level of production now that's done live, people would freak out.
Yeah. Well, I know. It'd
especially
be like, whoa,
quality.
is this scripted? Is this scripted?
Yeah.
How could this happen?
I say, is this a movie? This is amazing. And they would not understand it at all. Oh, Kevin says he would love to see that. Yeah. So Kevin, I'm sure if Captain Jack, if you feel like creating some sort of a video behind the scenes and show it, please, by all means, get it to Kevin and let Kevin, distribute it or maybe tweet it out or something, because I would love to see it. That'd be an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that line right there from X80 Stamps it says it all. Okay. So how is the SL2 for the 888? He's about to order the SL2 himself, Levi.
Yeah. So obviously I haven't done any productions with it yet, but putting it together and doing my initial tests, all good. I'm in the process. I have to, next purchase is the masts for the shark fin antennas. So I'm still kind of, I'm building those out right now. So haven't really tested it out beyond that. So, but everything's working just beautifully out of the box. It's just really cool that you've got all those AES inputs. It's just a really nice integration. So far, really happy. We'll see how it goes on an actual production though.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're going to be happy with it. The integration of a lot of these wireless systems and how versatile they are now.
Yeah.
Man, that was one of the things I was really hoping to talk to Patricia about, because she has been around for 4 decades. We were going to talk about the early days in the early 80s. She worked on Pet Cemetery and she could tell us the old analog film days. And she sent me a bunch of pictures of some of the things that before we had modern Zeppelins and combinations of windscreens and pop filters and stuff. They were having to actually develop those in order to do their job correctly. It's not like a camera where you've had tripods and dollies. They had to figure out ways of making the microphones quiet in order to capture their dialogue.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And well, even I mean, sound speeds, that term comes from where?
Well, that actually comes from the early days of film. I actually have a video called The Real Origin of MOS, one of the first videos I did on my channel. And I talk about how that happens and I show examples of the old Vitafoam system and how they started to roll. When they first started, and I should make people watch the video. I really should.
Well, I'll
I
go
love
watch it.
talking and hearing my own voice, of course, and you guys know that. But I tell you, it's one of those things that it's really neat when you watch the video because I start off explaining sound, how picture started, how the two of them got married together, and then how sound moved forward. And it's a really good video if you just do a search for sound speeds, the art, the I just do a search real quick. MOS.
Origins of MOS.
Yeah, the
Sound
origin
speeds
of MOS right here. Not the right one. MOS. The real origin of MOS right here. I will post it in the chat so people can see it. Where is it? There it is. That video right there is one that it was one of the first ones that I actually had to do quite a bit of editing on. And it'll take 10 or so minutes and you'll hear a difference in my presentation style because that was one of the first videos, and you'll realize at the very beginning of Sound Speeds, I usually talked very slow and occasionally I'd stumble over my words and I would trip up on them. But as time progressed, I became more of a stickler about, oh, that word was wrong. I have to redo the entire thing because I said is instead of was, and I'll redo the entire thing. And so if you look at my outtakes now, it's ridiculous because I'll have 15 minutes of me saying, 20 seconds of things perfect, garbage. And then I finally get it perfect. I'm like, great, fine, take that one, move on. And so in post, I'll look for the waveforms and I'll say, that one looks the same, 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 that one looks, oh, that one looks different. And then I'll back up and say, okay, so that one after that is the next line. Okay, good. So that was the last good one. That's the one.
It's not a bad editing workflow or overall workflow. It works.
Yeah, it works fairly quickly when you do it that way. But it's just the shooting. To shoot a 3-minute video taking an hour and a half to shoot is garbage.
Yeah, well, there's a reason. There is a reason that you're a boom operator and I'm a location mixer. There's and not on camera acting.
It's really funny because I'm not the kind of person that someone could hire to. Now, what's really interesting is if I'm doing a live show, I've gone and spoken in front of, auditoriums of people and stuff like that, I'll be a little bit nervous, but as soon as I walk on stage, disappears. I'm perfectly confident and stuff being up on stage because I know who I am and I am what I am and what you see is what you get. And so I'm not self-conscious about that. What's interesting, though, is when I'm recording in Sound Speeds and it's just me and the camera, I will botch every word. I'll mess everything up 5,000 times, and then it will never work right. But if I do a live stream, aside from saying certain things, like in the live stream I went back and I rewatched the live stream that I did with you and Booth Junkie and Podcastage, and I found that I said the phrase in all honesty way too many times. I probably, if you made a drinking game out of me saying in all honesty, you would be completely drunk by the end of that video. Because
it's funny, I didn't notice. That's interesting.
Well, I go back and I listen because there's a lot of things you can learn from your own videos. And I usually go back and I rewatch my videos. Usually as soon as it's done, I'll watch it as it's uploading. And then if I say, I messed that thing up, I'll go back and I'll re-render it with that change. And then I'll start uploading it again. In the meantime, I'm rewatching it. I'm still watching that initial thing. And so that way, if I botch something else up, usually I'll say, okay, cancel the render, change that to re-render. And I'll do that. And then I'll upload it and rewatch it. And then I'll usually end up rewatching it again once it hits, when it shows up in the card, area. So that way I can add in my cards and stuff. But, I'm terrible about putting, saying something. If it's scripted, if it's planned out, I'm much better to just fly by the seat of my pants in front of an audience, talking to people. Yeah. Very, very comfortable doing that. But put me in front of a camera, I will mess up.
Yeah, it makes all the difference to have a human being, even if it's on a kind of a forum like this, just to have someone that you're talking to, because it's more natural human interaction, really. And I'm on the same. The amount of material that falls on the edit room floor, so to speak, is outrageous. Like I can't tell you how many times I trip over just trying to say the simplest little sentence. And
Oh yeah.
I don't script mine out. I don't have an exact script. I have notes, and I'll pause and I'll take a look at my notes and say okay, and then I'll try to deliver my line. And so there's a little bit of freelancing going on, and that's part of the issue. But it always ends up coming across, I think, a little bit better than totally scripted. Like I had one video really early on in my channel where I'm like, I had all the script, scrolling up and on the teleprompter, and I'm like, and then what you do is that and it's just horrible.
I want to see it. You got to send that one to me.
No,
Oh yes.
I will not. I refuse.
I'm still trying to get Booth Junkie to send me one. He actually, for his original audiobooks and stuff that he did on ACX, he created another name. He will not tell anybody what that name is. I'm like, hey, would you tell me what it is? I want to buy the book. He's like, nope, not going to tell you. And anytime I've asked him in the past, he said, nope, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Well, my first thing was an audiobook as well, and I will not tell you what it is, and I will not tell you where to buy it. I'm with him.
You actually did an audiobook too? Was it through ACX?
I'm not going to tell you.
There's millions of books on ACX. There's no way I'm going to randomly come across the Curtis Judd.
That's my goal. That's my goal. You know what? I'm fading. I've got to get to bed.
Check out the video also that I just got through posting there. If you want to see me botch things up, and there's only about a third of the problems.
Oh, okay.
There's only about a third of the issues right there in that video. I should almost put it on now and just play the thing for everybody, because it talks about, it starts off and you hear me say sound speeds and then I'm not acting at all. I didn't realize I was going to do this video. This is mostly me trying to make one video. And it was the video of me talking about what it is goes into a sound speeds episode. But I tell you, there are so many times I botched things up. And as I was progressing through this video, after a while, it became like, this is such a bad thing. I'm going to have to cut out some of this.
Yeah.
And so the outtakes and the glitches and the mess ups, you only see about a third of them before I totally was, it was bad. I mean, I should almost put one of these things. I should almost put this on when you bow out and put it on in the stream and just let it go.
There you go. Good call.
Make people watch that. You're fading already? It's not even your bedtime though.
Well, it is. Well, I haven't done my exercise yet today, so that there's still that to do. And I have I'm trying to put out a video, two videos this week, actually. I'm going to have a live stream where we do a light review, but then I also have a, this is not so much for the production sound mixers, but we have here, this is the Shure SLX-D. So it's our new digital kind of mid-tier wireless system. It's really kind of made more for live events, to be honest, but the receivers are all half-rack receivers, so nobody's going to put that in a bag, or they could put it on a cart, I guess, but if you're going to put something on a cart, you're going to do something higher density than that too. So
yeah.
Anyway, it's a pretty good system for the right crowd. In the corporate video world, I can see a lot of it. So.
I can't remember which one it is. There is a transmitter that has a bend in it. I forgot that one. But it's a very thin one, and it's designed for you to like put over someone's head on Broadway or something. You could easily
isn't the same that they're using in all the sports, like all the football and
yeah. You can take the transmitter and fold it in half or something like that. Or maybe not complete fold it in half, but I know you can at least bend it. But it's
long. It's kind of long and it's long and really
skinny. Yeah, it's like this, and then it's like a wallet, type. Well, it's smaller than a wallet, but yeah, the same kind of thing.
Pretty cool.
But
stuff.
if they could make something like that, if someone could make a transmitter that would allow you to slightly curve it, just a little bit, that'd be amazing.
Yeah. This one's
the QSX right there. William Baker says QXS is the one that we're talking about.
Yep, that's it.
Gotcha. Thanks for that, William. I remember seeing it and saying that's a really cool thing. Speaking of Shure, I bought a Shure lavalier. It had a 4-pin connector, which I didn't realize. Do you know how to connect it to a 3-pin XLR? Yeah.
Yes.
There's you can either get it rewired, or you could buy an adapter. So how to connect it to a 3-pin XLR?
I'd probably get it rewired.
Yeah, you
Because once you
can.
get an adapter, then it's
Go
like,
ahead.
it's just long. As soon as you get an adapter as well, it just makes that stem so long, and it's kind of a weak point. You know what I mean?
But you're talking about connecting up to an XLR, though. Of course,
Oh,
Curtis has one right next to him.
no. Well, this is the short. This goes with the short. This is the TA4F right here. So,
Yeah.
and this happens to be the microdot version. You can see even that's a little bit on the long side. Like that.
Mhm.
That's a little unwieldy. Even you're not a fan of. Do you guys use microdot much, or are you mostly
Most of
wired
the time, we
specifically?
get them wired specifically for whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
people. The whole idea behind microdot is that you can use it if you have integrated, WYSICOM, Zaxcom, Electrosonics, different brands in your
Hmm.
kit. You can easily change in and out as
Right.
needed. But I
Right.
tell you, most of the mixers I work with, they have certain lives they like to use with certain transmitters, and they have them wired for that.
Yeah. It's a smaller, tougher kind of connection that way, I think. You know what I mean? Like that you're not going to have a cable pull out, most
Yeah.
likely.
Did a 12-minute video 2 decades ago with focus of best messing up shots, lines, and getting kicked out of a store. Purpose of the video was to learn how to use iMovie when it first came out.
Oh,
Well, that
wow.
sounds fun. It's funny because one of the things I did back in the 90s is I used to document everything with a video camera. And that started actually back in the 80s. But I showed Banju a couple of my early videos, not some of my earliest ones that will never see the light of day, but there's a couple of videos I remember I've showed a few select people that are kind of cool because it was vlogging before vlogging was a thing, like 2 decades before vlogging was a thing. Back in the mid 90s, I would go with friends and we would just decide that we were going to climb the side of a cliff. And I would grab the video camera and we just start free climbing the side of a cliff. And we're not talking like 1,000-foot cliff. We're talking like maybe 120 feet, something like that. But still, if you fell, it would be, death.
Mhm.
But one of the things that we found near the Chattahoochee River is that there was an area that was a cliff that kind of went at an angle like this. So what I found is that I could climb up on one side, they could climb up on a different part, and as long as I got up and kind of, positioned myself in certain ways, this is back on the shoulder kind of SVHS shoulder cameras, I could actually, grab the wall and videotape, and it was a pretty decent angle. And I was pretty happy with that. And I could videotape my friends climbing up the side of the cliff. So, and then I did
Cool.
another one where my friends Bill and Thomas, we went on a cruise, and I videotaped that thing like you were making a TV show, and it was a full like 60 minutes of just us cutting up. We were swimming with stingrays. Thomas put accidentally in Mexico in one of the shops, he put down his video camera and forgot where he put it down. And so we were running from shop to shop in Mexico saying, where's his video camera? We were convinced it was going to end up on a shelf with, sale price on it. It just so much crazy stuff in that video. It was amazing. And just joking around and stuff. But that was one of the videos that, the very last day on the cruise ship, I don't drink. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't do drugs. I'm very boring. But one of the things I do have the ability to do is instigate. And so I told those guys, I said, you should get drunk before dinner. And so I convinced them, and I just started to convince them to drink things. And they were taking doubles of this, that, and the other. And it was just by the time, and then I was like, okay, now that we've done that, let's go up to the jogging track and let's jog. And we just went up there and started jogging. Only one of them did that. The other one didn't. But then I would convince them to do something else. And then let's go to the nightclub and take over the dance floor. And you would just,
Oh,
yeah.
boy.
Sometimes, Curtis, if you want some fun, I will show it to you. You're probably one of the few people that I would show it to you. It's not something that I release or have on YouTube anywhere, but that's a fun video. And it's, and I have quite a few of those kind of things that are just me goofing off. Some of the footage that I acquired back in the 90s, you can't do that stuff anymore. I mean, we're talking about
Right.
here I am, long blonde hair down to like, the bottom of my rib cage. I wore a black hat, turn around backwards, black cutoff finger gloves, black sunglasses, black shirt, black trench coat, black boots. This is pre-Columbine.
Wow.
And we're talking like, I looked like one of those guys that you saw in the video. And it's like, yikes. Because one of the things that we used to do on a public access TV show I had at the time is we would just decide to cut up and cause all kinds of trouble. We used to blow things up in my friend's backyard. And we would do that. And then of course I would record it and then put it on public access TV. So if anybody happens to have old 25, year old videos of me, you would see me and my friends blowing up stuff in the backyard of my friend's house. We even blew up something up on his porch at one point, and the thing that we had exploded actually spiraled off, and it spiraled on the side of his vinyl siding. And you see in about 2 seconds, the vinyl siding goes from perfect to on fire and melted. And it's amazing. Oof. It's a completely awesome video. Yeah, that was a lot of fun back in the old days. You can't get away with a lot of this stuff anymore.
No.
I have my early days of public access television had people's mouth dropping, and it was a very much a common thing. Actually, another fun story is right before I graduated college. Like some of the footage that one of the videos that I shot back, and I believe it was around 1994, maybe it was 93, is one of my friends was trying to restore a car. I think it was a Chevy Cavalier, and he had all kinds of issues with it. The thing was just not working out. And he's a mechanic. He does great work. I mean, he has a Porsche he's rebuilding and stuff now. But back then, he was just having so many issues. He would fix one thing and two other things would break. He'd fix those two things, four things would break. And it's just constantly was one of those things. So he ended up finally just having enough. And he said, you know what? I'm going to destroy this car. So as of this Thursday, whoever wants to come, we're going to destroy the car. Well, I videotaped the footage. I videotaped it. And then I decided I was going to send it to Real TV. If you remember the old TV show that took videos that were sent in, kind of like America's Funniest Home Videos, but it was about real kind of amazing things or interesting things. And they decided to buy the footage from me, license it, and then Maximum Risk did, or actually Life Camera Action did, then Maximum Risk. The day before I graduated college, that night before, the same night before that one of my friends, Jeff, who actually was the guy that decided to destroy his car, he graduated the same day I did from a different school. But the night before we graduated, it aired on The World's Stupidest People. So that was one of the awesome things. He was at a drinking party with a bunch of his friends in college, and all of a sudden they had on TV, and they're like, hey, is that you? And he's like, yeah, it is. He's like, you're on The World's Stupidest People. You graduate tomorrow. That's awesome. And so he contacted me and said, hey, Alan, guess what? We were on The World's Stupidest People. I'm like, well, it's appropriate. Awesome. Let's see here. What does Kevin say? Oh, it just still had the absolute gut-wrenching, puking crap I filmed 45 years ago when I was a kid. Dude, I'm going to tell you something funny. There was, like I said, I'm an instigator. And I would show up at parties people would be drinking at. And one of them, a friend of ours named Matt, who got himself completely drunk, was like hugging the porcelain bowl, and you can imagine what was happening there. I decided when I started working at Georgia State University's television channel called GSTV, not gas station TV, which is what it is now. That you see at the television as you're pumping up gas. GSTV was interested in promos and stuff for TV shows. And so I would take some random clips that I would do for some of the video footage that I had, and I would make some of the craziest station IDs you'd ever seen. One of them was you saw this guy who every 2 seconds was just into a toilet, just nonstop for a good 30 seconds. And about 25 seconds in, you're like, what am I watching here? Why am I watching this guy get sick multiple times? And you just hear us laughing and making fun of him in the background. But then it says, watch GSTV. And then it fades out and then it comes back and it says, it'll make you hurl. And that was one of the station IDs that I made for the show. It was really awesome. But that was to give you an idea of the kind of things I used to put on public access TV. Now here I am doing sound speeds and trying to be very prim and proper and not cuss and everything else.
You're doing great. Keep it up.
I'll try. Let's see here. Did you already talk about how you got into it? How we got into what? How did you get into sound and lighting, Curtis? How did you get into that?
I was a
I'm
photographer.
going to do this number, and I'm going to take back over now.
Oh, you're the question asker now. Okay. I was a photographer, so I got into photography when I first started college, when I was 18, and I spent a lot of time in the library reading books on photography. This is back in the film days, when I should have been studying for my classes. And then I bought an SLR camera, so I had to eat ramen for a month because I spent all my money on the camera instead. And so that's how I got into the photography part of things. And then as far as sound came along a little bit later for me. That's when my brother was a musician, and is a musician, I should say. And although he does mostly film, he's a director of photography, basically, for corporate work mostly. But he got his first Pro Tools rig, and he brought it over to my house, and we kind of nerded out for a while. And then that's when I got into voiceover a little bit. So I did a little bit of voiceover, did voice for one book, a very small book.
Prove it. Tell me the book.
Nope. You can't trick me into it. And
What
then
trick?
when DSLR, so I then eventually got a DSLR that before they had video, and then when they started putting video into them, that's when the two married for me. So and I don't know why it is that I have a proclivity for sound. There are a lot of people making videos on YouTube about cameras, and their channels explode, and they've got hundreds of thousands of subscribers. But I'm just more interested in the sound end of things. So that's kind of how I started.
So you actually are more interested in the sound side of things than the camera side?
Yeah, I would say so. Yep.
What is this trick? Try closing the eyes and snoring.
Okay, so can you go ahead and take that chat comment off the screen? Look at our names.
Yeah. That doesn't work for me.
Okay, gotta go. Time for a bio break.
Let's do this.
Oh, no, whoa, you can override that.
Huh? I can't lock it, so that way you can't adjust it. But yeah, I can change it. Yeah, I don't think you can't change mine, but I can change yours. Keep your paws off my name. I think it was Kevin at the very end of the night after that the 5+ hour live stream that we did, which was awesome. Kevin and I were on talking for another 2 or 3 hours after that night, after the live stream ended. And I think by the end of that, we were changing his name over and over again. It was just, he would change it, then I would change it. We were just casually talking and constantly changing his name.
Can we bring Kevin in? Can we bring him in here? And
what?
And let me go to bed?
Oh, come on, no. If Kevin comes in here, we're going to keep you here for the full time that you said you were going to be here. Kevin, I'm going to send it to you through Twitter. So if you check this, if you are interested in joining, you now have it sitting, the link sitting there in your Twitter. So if you want to join, by all means, come on in and let's have fun. Let's if you looked in my description here in this video, which is unchanged, it is it like no, it's not. No, it's not. I wish that there was a way for me to forcibly keep you in here. I wish there was a way that I could just not allow you to leave. Say no. Because there was a stream. There was a stream that started off with me and Michael Wynn. And Curtis came in within the first few minutes of the stream. And as we were talking, after about 20 or 25 minutes in, we were talking to Curtis, and I think he had asked a couple of questions. And finally we said, we should just add you to this stream. And he said, give me 5 minutes to set up. We're like, awesome. So I sent him the link. And then I said, well, geez, if we're going to start adding people, let me add Bandrew. And so I sent him a link, but he was in bed. He joined us, I think, on sound for just a moment. And
See,
then
he's one of those sane people that sleeps 8 hours a night.
you can call it sane if you want. I always say old man to him. I always say, oh, geez, you're such an old man. He's like, I am. And he's such a good guy. I joke with him a whole lot. Oh, no. Okay. You need 10 minutes. So if Curtis wants to go 10-1 for a second and then come back, that'll give Kevin a chance to come in.
I'll hang in there for 10 minutes, and then when Kevin gets here, I'll say hello.
You should totally
give him a high five.
You should totally just stay here with us, and it will be amazing.
Yeah, but how am I going to make it through tomorrow? I got a day job still, you know.
That's okay. You're going to be fine. Just pop a Zip Fizz and you're good to go.
Oh, I see my name has changed again.
It did? I didn't realize your name had changed. So yeah. See, it's a mistake for me to invite Kevin in here because he's on the West Coast and he'll be here literally all night. I will not finish the video that I had planned to edit tonight if Kevin comes in here, because Kevin will gladly talk. We have 30 people in here right now. We'll see. I should tell Kevin to tweet out the universe and have them add here. So see, look at this. Andrea says you two are on a marathon, 2 hours. Curtis should stay here for the full 3 hours that he promised us.
Whoa. There were never any promises along these lines.
Technically it was 4 hours.
No,
or maybe it was 5.
No. Yeah.
I can't remember.
I see how this works.
Yeah. I came in about an hour in and I thought it was going to be too late. Well, I usually leave because people have asked me to. I didn't used to do it. As soon as the live stream used to finish, I would instantly go in and turn it to unlisted, and then I would add it as a one of the Patreon benefits, which if I can't remember the level, I think it's $10 level. The live stream archive becomes a feature. And now I think it's been people that would say, I missed your live stream because I was sleeping. That's on the other side of the world, or I'm in Europe and I missed your stream. I'd love to be able to have a chance to see it. So I started leaving up there only within about the past month, I think, for about 3 days, and then I make it unlisted. So
why do you do that? Why do you unlist it?
I unlist it because I leave it I don't have, not that I have a whole lot of Patreons anyway, but I make it that way it's a benefit if you are a Patreon person that is interested in supporting the channel through Patreon. You have that option. And if I think it's like the $10 level or something like that, then you have access to the playlist of my live streams. Because sometimes I just get into a mood and I'll start ranting about something, or there are trolls in my chat that will get me into a rant about something. And they'll usually a Bandrew's there, he'll start trolling and he'll start
I can't imagine this. I've never seen this before.
Yeah. What? Yeah. See, I would love to see a rant. I thought it was really funny on Twitter earlier. Kevin said that he saw you almost do a rant. He said he saw your eye twitch. That was the closest he ever saw you to doing a rant. Yeah. And I thought that'd be really funny. I was like, I would love nothing more. That's the reason why I made the joke about, I'd love to see Mr. Rogers do a rant because, Curtis, you're without a doubt the most wholesome, easygoing, chill, cool, laid back guy, probably on YouTube, if not the world. It's one of those things that we would just love to see you just get fired up about something and just rant.
Do you want me
would
to
you
get
do that
fired
for
up?
us?
Well,
what would be something that would get you going now?
I'm too tired right now, but I want to. Do you want to talk? You want to hear me talk about cameras?
Sure. Well, that would be a good segue to get Kevin in here.
Yeah, so he could talk about cameras all night. I'm kind of over cameras. I'm kind of done with them.
You got the scoop here.
That's about. I mean, Canon R5, Canon R6, Sony A7S III, Panasonic S5. They're just a big yawn to me.
Really?
You know what I feel like? I feel like at this point, I know, like, I don't really get 8K. To me, and I'm just going to sound like an old man, but I don't
No.
really get 8K. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. People talk, oh yeah, but then you can recompose in post. I'm like, well, composition is more than just changing the frame size. If you move a camera, it has a different look than if you just cut the frame in post. It's a different thing, and so I don't
It
buy
also has to
that
be lit
necessarily.
differently. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it has to be lit. Yeah, and I just don't see. I don't see that argument. I don't see the value of 8K for, like, if you consider online consumption of, and maybe this changes when we get 5G or whatever, but most people are watching on their phones, let's be honest. Maybe on the live streams you have a larger percentage watching on their computers or something else, but I just like and frankly, you ask most talent or actors, they're not saying, hey, can I have 8K instead of just 4K? Because I look way more awesome. You can see every single flaw in my skin.
That's actually
And
one of the things that changed when we went from the world of film
yep,
to video,
yep,
makeup had to change. And
yep,
then when we went into high definition,
yep.
makeup had to change again. And now it's a lot more difficult. It's a lot harsher on talent's skin. If you see actors and actresses outside of makeup, they usually have broken out spots on their faces, or at least they may have broken out spots on their faces, because you see at this point, we've already gotten to the point now where actors and actresses are having to do, they're having to shave, like do a close shave to make sure they don't have any stubble showing. They will have to do, we're almost at the point they're going to have to start doing pore treatments in order to
maintain their
make sure that
health.
their perfect looking skin stays perfect. Because if you light it the wrong way, it looks harsh. If, for example, you light more with direct light, it looks a lot harsher than it does if you do more backlight and and balance more forward. And so you're talking about, there's a really good video on YouTube that I forgot what it's called, but it's something like a 4K is not what we need to be doing, or 4K is a fad, or 4K something. I forgot what it is, but he talks about how when 4K first came out, everyone was talking about it. There was the cool 4K videos. You can see some really cool nature stuff, but people were talking about 4K video. Some people were uploading it. But the thing about it is it's almost too much resolution that you don't really need. Because, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to rant. I think 4K has its place. I definitely think that 4K has its place. I think in nature, that's a perfect example. I think in sports, it probably fits. And especially when we start talking, and there's high frame rate, that's a whole different discussion as well. And I think that has its place as well. But I'm not convinced that narrative filmmaking improves when you go to 8K necessarily. And maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe on the big screens, it makes a difference and it's better in some way. I don't know. But I find that, even with 4K cameras, I would say that even when you start adding the diffusion filters to kind of change that look, it's still, I don't know, it just looks different. So anyway, and then we're being told here that 4K is ancient. It's from 2012. That's true. That's fine. But all I'm saying is, for me, beyond 4K, certainly for what I'm doing, doesn't make a lot of sense. On my corporate video work, what do I deliver? Almost entirely HD.
Yeah.
Because how is it being distributed? In fact, there was even a time early on, we delivered an HD once, and we had a conference at a hotel, and their projectors couldn't display HD content.
Yeah.
That's how crazy these kind of things get sometimes. And so, I don't know. I don't know that. I don't see the advantages of 8K. I think it's interesting that we can do it, but to me, what's more interesting is HDR. But the problem is it's it's so difficult we don't have the full pipeline. I mean, we're starting to have, these almost all TVs you buy today are HDR TVs. I get that, but they're all different max nit specifications and their implementation. It's just, there's a lot of complications still, and we still haven't, I don't feel like we've really seen the benefit of HDR just yet.
And there's a lot that can be said for that. I know that, like, when we were on Stranger Things, they were shooting at such high resolution. I think we were using the Red Dragon helium, if memory serves. The resolution, I believe, was 70/40 by 35/20. It was a 2-to-1 aspect ratio for Netflix.
Okay.
And I believe that the reason why shot at that resolution was because they wanted to make it future proof.
Right.
But then Walking Dead shoots most of its show on 16 mil, which, by the way, becomes about 1080p. It scans very accurately at 1080p. 35 millimeters scans very accurately at 4K. And so Captain Jack's point here of props also had to change. We used wooden guns and electrical tape on them back in the day, which would never work today. What is that old show? It was a of like a 240p world back then, because that's what it was. I mean, it was back in the old NTSC world, for example. It was very, very low quality. I think the maximum broadcastable resolution, which you'd lose about half of when you broadcast, was usually only around 400 lines of resolution. 380 is if memory serves what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Betacam SP was around 360, 380, something like that. By the time networks broadcast stuff, you had bunny ears and it started to go bad. What was the show? Something Shadows, Dark Shadows, was it? They used to have little things floating around on the screen, and they would look, ooh, what is this? And the whole idea behind them floating things with thread on the screen was that you would never see those little threads by the time they broadcast it out.
Yeah.
But now people are going back and watching Dark Shadows. It's been scanned in at high res, and you now see all these little lines floating down. You're like, man, that looks terrible. And so that's just, and that's something that people, it's not a future-proof show at that point. I mean, if you watch the old episodes of Batman, Green Hornet, I Love Lucy, any of those shows, they don't show at nearly as high res as things do now. But I was even talking about Star Wars earlier tonight, and 4K 77 and 4K 83, the two 4K scales of the 35 millimeter prints, which are not legit copies, but they are the original versions that aired in 77 and 83, or went on in the movie theaters back then. But Captain Jack's point here is spot on. Props and everything had to change, not just makeup. We're talking about props. We're talking about set decoration. Even if you look back, like right now, movie theaters are reopening. I'm not sure if they're doing this in your area, but AMC theaters, at least in Georgia, are playing Back to the Future, Goonies, 10th anniversary of Inception, things like that. And if you go back and you watch Raiders of the Lost Ark when it shows up at the movie tavern or something, you will see out of focus shots.
Yep.
You will see them because they never expected the screens to be that big enough to see them. And you could tell the difference between one that is a fixed focal length and it's wide enough and you're never going to have that issue, and one that is something that had to be manually focused, because it will cut in and out of that and you'll see it like crazy.
You know where I saw it too just recently? I watched some old Star Trek Next Generation, and the number of out of focus shots is actually surprising. But it's that same thing. It worked. It worked fine back when that was airing. It was not a problem. But now they converted it all to HD, now it's like, ooh.
And television screens now in your house are bigger than movie screens were in some theaters only a few decades ago. Now, granted, when I was a kid, movie screens were still movie screens. And that's one of the things that now, as movie theaters are starting to reopen, we're starting to see that people are very anxious to get back into movie theaters. Yeah. And that's the reason, but there's no content. So people are starting to show older videos that are older movies that were tried and true. People love, I mean, Goonies is going to be one of those. It's awesome. My wife and I had talked about taking the girls to go see Back to the Future in the theater.
Yeah.
They've never seen Back to the Future because the girls are very sheltered, and the whole idea of a son having his mom pursue him and wait, you're gonna go touch her in her no, that whole thing. It's like, okay, teenage girls, you might not want to introduce them to that, so a little on the nervous side there, but there's some really cool things that are coming to movie theaters that they have out there simply because they're tried and true awesome movies that people can go and see since there's nothing else out there.
Yeah. So okay, you just kind of dashed my whole rant there, because my rant maybe doesn't hold up. Maybe I'm just not seeing right. You know what I mean? Maybe 8K is a thing. Or now we have the 12K cameras now too.
No, you
we
were
have the
spot
12K.
on.
Well,
you were spot on though, because if you have, one of the big things that we always hear about is DPs that want to shoot in a wider aspect ratio, and then they say we could just we can punch in and digitally, create coverage. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Because one of the reasons why you have a wide shot set with lighting a certain way, and then you punch in for coverage and you go in and you reset the lighting is because it's got to look a certain way. Yeah. When you set up a shot for a wide versus a shot for a close up, the lighting is totally different. It's not just the same as punching in.
Yeah, it's not.
And
it's not.
And it's not going to be good even if you drop a boom in.
But that's only one argument in favor of 8K and 12K and so on and so forth. But there are other arguments as well. The thing is that's interesting to me, though, it feels like that, for example, an 8K image is actually resolving more detail than our eyes typically see in real life.
Right. And do you really want to spend bandwidth on and spend all the time perhaps rendering and downloading and everything just for something you're not going to see?
Maybe for nature docs, maybe, but I'm not sure. And here's the thing, that for narrative film, to me, it seems like the big thing with narrative film is you're trying to suspend disbelief. You're putting someone in a story, and you want them to go into this story world or this dream world. You're trying to take them there. And that's where, for me, sometimes that's where, for example, frame rate becomes really interesting and important, because of the what it conveys. It's almost become like a language. You know what I mean? It's almost like a language, because when you see 60p, that to me, that kind of says, okay, it's a gaming streamer, it's a sports broadcast, or maybe a nature documentary. That's what it says. That's kind of what it speaks to me without even consciously thinking about it. That's the look that it has to me. Like I remember when the Hobbit movies came out, and we went and saw the 48.
HDR.
It was the high. It's HFR actually.
HFR. That was it. High frame rate. Yep. Yes, I saw that too. It was only the first movie,
and it was to me it felt disorienting. It looked like actors on a set, is what it looked like to me in many of those shots. Not all the shots. But many of them looked like actors on a set, and it was clear that they were wearing makeup. And to me, it kind of I felt like it pulled me out of the story.
Yeah, I've heard that argument a whole lot. The thing that kind of irritates me at times is when they set when DPs or whoever, they do a dance number or there's an action sequence and they set the ISO so high that it's like a strobe effect. Mm-hmm. Aladdin, the new Aladdin movie that only came out like a year or two ago with Will Smith. My daughter, my 4-year-old, loves watching that movie. So we watch it quite often, but it drives me crazy because the DP set those, and it looks like it's sped up. It looks sped up during the dance numbers. And I look at it and I shake my head saying, why in the world did they choose it that way? I understand it for like, if you got to do an action sequence and there's a whole bunch of things floating in the air and you want to make sure everybody can see the action sequence you're spending a lot of money on, I can understand it that way. Saving Private Ryan is a great example, but it's also a giveaway. If there's got that natural blur to it and then all of a sudden it goes really sharp and crisp and you see every little bitty frame, it looks like a stop motion movie. Mm-hmm. That's when to me, it starts to look a little awkward. Now, I noticed that a little bit in The Hobbit. And I did notice that because of it was not so much because of the FER that it was I think it was more the resolution in combination with the high frame rate, because I do notice that there was a whole bunch of tracking shots, and those tracking shots seem to me almost like your eyes. Now, I understand that was the whole purpose, that Peter Jackson really liked the idea. James Cameron really likes the idea of doing high frame rate. But to me, it's like, do we really need that? When you watch a movie, if it's too high a resolution and you start noticing shots out of focus. When I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark, there was a shot between when Harrison Ford was talking to Marcus Brody. Marcus, is that his name? Marcus, the guy who worked in the museum or something. When Marcus he first comes and visits Indiana, they're inside of this, I think it's a yellow type environment. There is something shiny on the back. And I remember seeing that it was like a curved type surface, and you could see a sheen in that in the movie theater. And I remember seeing a few times where I saw a microphone cross it. And I remember looking at that and saying,
are you serious? In Indiana Jones?
Because it was on a humongous screen. I think I saw it on the IMAX.
Okay.
When I saw it, I think I saw it on IMAX in Mall of Georgia. So it was on a humongous screen, and it was blown up. And I remember saying, that is out of focus. That is out of focus. That is out of focus. Yeah. And there was quite a few shots that were out of focus. And it wasn't just a deep focused lens at like an 8 mil or a 6 mil or a 10 mil, something like that, deep focus lens where everything is in focus. It was more of one that they had to manually focus. And I would see it cut in from a medium shot that was completely crystal clear to a wide shot that was out of focus. I'm like, geez, what are they doing? And it would take me straight out of it. Yeah. Almost the same as bad ADR.
Yeah. Yeah, bad ADR. That's another perfect example. Bad sound design too. Bad sound design. It's like, whoa, there's a lot going on in this scene, but it doesn't sound like it. I've seen some of that. And bad scoring can make a difference too.
Yeah.
Poof. Bad stuff.
But then also good sound makes it look better.
It does.
And that's something that people just go ahead.
It helps with the suspension of disbelief as well. Mm-hmm. It helps people it helps people get, into the story, where they're into this. Yeah.
Yeah. That we always say in the sound, Marcus Brody, thank you very much for that one. Marcus Brody was his name. The thing we always say is, the audience, when they're leaving a movie, they're not sitting there humming an establishing shot. They don't leave humming an establishing shot. They hum, and they talk. Oh, did you hear him say this? Oh, you hear that line? And then they're jiving to the music. And I mean, like Inception's back in theaters. And I think, to me, like, all right, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Inception, it is a wonderful movie. But when they go deep, when they go 4 levels deep, and he's first appearing, I think it might even be 5 levels deep or something like that at this point. And it's that bah, that loud, like foghorn type sound. Yeah. I used to crank it up. I mean, like, whenever my wife would go out of town, there were some things, if she was out with the girls and I had the house to myself, when we first got married, we had a DTS sound system. And it had subwoofer and everything. And then when we started having kids and stuff, and they started knocking over speakers, we're like, okay, fine. For at least a few years, we're going to have to probably jump down to a sound bar or something. And then we realized the subwoofer would actually wake people up. So we disabled the subwoofer. So now it is just like technically it's a 2.1. Well, I think it is virtual surround sound bar, but we've disabled the 0.1. So it's probably not even crossed over well anymore. But it's kind of what you expect with kids and stuff that's playing the same thing over and over again, like Aladdin. And so now we've, whenever they leave, and all of them leave, and I don't decide to do a live stream or have fun with editing or something along those lines, I'll usually go downstairs and I'll put on some things and I'll blast it. I'll engage the subwoofer and I'll turn the subwoofer up too loud, and I'll just do crazy stuff. And I'll put on something like the beginning of Phantom of the Opera, the movie, because I don't have access to the stage play, obviously. And I'll play like that Inception piece and certain things like that just, have a real strong impact. Yeah. And I love.
Captain Jack has a different perspective here that's worth putting up there.
The movie 1917 really sucked me in, as it felt like I was really there in the movie. Had they shot it in 8K 60 FPS, that would pull me in even more. You know, there's a lot that can be said for that. If they do a good job with everything, if they do a good job with every single material, particle, effect, and everything looks good, then by all means, it can certainly pull you in. But a lot of the times, productions, there's some things that they look at and they don't expect you to linger on. Like, for example, I can tell you this from having worked on Walking Dead. If you look at a lot of the zombies that are in the front of a big group, like, for example, if there's a group of 300 walkers moving someplace, what you'll usually run into is the first probably couple of dozen walkers that are right in front of the camera have been paid for a pay bump. And so they'll go into full makeup. After about the first couple of dozen or so, the farther back ones that you're still seeing their face, but they're farther back and probably a little out of focus, they're wearing masks that are masks that have a little elastic string around the back, but it is a walker mask. And they have a whole series of those things that they can change a few little bitty things to. They'll change the hair to go with the mask and you'll never notice it. And then behind them, they have people that are just that look like regular people, except that they have their skin painted to look zombie color. And in the first few seasons of Walking Dead, if you worked on the show, they would say they're not zombies. Don't call them zombies. But then, and that was like through, I think, season 4 or 5 or something like that. But then when I was there for season 7, you would hear them say, yeah, so the zombies come out here. Zombie. I'm like, whoa, they never used to allow that to happen. At some point, they started calling them zombies. They're not zombies, they're walkers. Okay, excuse me, walkers. And they would be very particular about that. But after a while, it was like, you know, it's they're you know, you know, they just did not seem to care anymore. Yeah. But I understand what you're talking about in the AK 60 FPS. If the show is prepared for that and they're expected to deliver in that, that's the big key, is delivery. How is something being delivered? If Curtis or me shoots a video, there's a lot of the location shoots that I do, I shoot in 4K because I'll resize them in post. And I'll do that because if I'm walking toward the camera or something, I don't want to have to redo, or have multiple cameras set up for a wide and a tight. I'll shoot in 4K and I'll do a track in or out. And I don't know if do you do that, Curtis? When you shoot,
nah.
You don't?
No.
Do you usually shoot in 1080p or 4K?
4K.
You do?
Yeah.
But you edit in 4K and then you just render it out
well, it depends on where it's going. If it's a YouTube video, yeah, it'll stay 4K through the whole pipeline and it'll deliver in 4K. But for the corporate video, I have, even if I try to deliver in 4K, they're like, no, we need to also have a 1080p version and we need a 720p version.
Interesting.
And we're not using the 4K version. Just because of how it's distributed. It's all internal stuff in my particular case. And so they're not, that's what they need.
Probably
that's
bandwidth
because they're
going
to have 700, they're going to have 700 employees and streaming it to their desktop. So, and they're going to be watching it in a little tiny window on their, it's just what makes sense.
It doesn't make sense to have 4K running when it's only going to be in the, the upper, like a 25th of your screen.
Exactly.
Just running up there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I had to think about too. When I usually do my live streams, I do them at 720, even though I know you do yours at 1080 and that kind of thing. What I've run into though, is I can get a good solid 720p upload happening and it's not going to be an issue. But if I run 1080p, occasionally it glitches and it messes up and people will notice that and they'll say, oh, Alan, your frames are starting to drop and that kind of thing. I get a lot less complaints about people that say that simply say, your stream is really low quality. I get a lot less comments about that than I do someone that complains about it, dropping.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I have to confess, it really is my bedtime now. It's 11:04.
I'll help you out.
No. No, I really got to go.
All right, all right.
Unfortunately, it looks like Kevin
Yeah, he had an issue. His camera
has
won't
some
work with
sort of a
Streamlabs. So,
what?
so we'll actually
What?
we'll
What?
call. Yeah, I know. It sounds like an excuse to me. I
Sounds
think
like an
Kevin is
excuse to
actually
me.
afraid of being up all night again
He's
because I remember the last
probably
time
no.
we
He's sitting
talked, he
around
said
in
he
his
only had 4 hours to
he's sitting
sleep.
around in his underwear playing his bass guitar. Is what he's doing right now, and he doesn't. He's too lazy to go put on some clothes and come help out a friend. That's
Yeah,
what I. That's what I'm going with. How's that? Is that almost like a rant?
not quite. What is something that would totally get you triggered about? What would be something that would just? What is something that's a pet peeve or something that would just? What? Because I
Wait,
would love. I would.
it wasn't Alan that just said something mean about you.
That's okay.
Let's
Just
be clear
insult
about
me,
this,
Kevin. That's
Kevin.
fine.
It was me.
It's okay. It's just we'll just treat this like I'm evil. That's fine.
All right. Thank you. I want to
All
say
right.
thank you for the great information up at the start. I don't know if people that are here now know this, but at the start we actually talked about production sound comm systems. That was actually the
No.
kickoff here. So if are you gonna actually post this one or keep it up for 3 days or something like that?
I'll keep this
So
up for 3 days. So if you're watching it right now, it will probably be pulled down on the 7th. So I mean, if you're watching it now, you've watched the whole thing probably.
yeah.
But it's yeah. So unless you're
Okay.
one of the Patreon the few Patreons that have actually decided to go back and watch this, but yeah, it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny that I did not know what Curtis was presenting me. He did not tell me anything. He before we started the stream, he popped in like 2.5 minutes before we started. I was like looking at the clock, watching it count down.
Is
I'm
he
like,
gonna
is he
make
going to
it?
be here? Is he going to be here? It's going to be me starting this thing off and just blabbing. But and he came in and he said, I have my notepad here. You're not going to see my questions. I'm like, okay, well, let's see how long this goes. And what
It was
is it going to
15.
be?
15
Yeah.
minutes. 20. Well, no, it grew.
It was
It grew.
right at 15 minutes. And he's like, all right, we've covered everything I had. I'm like,
That's
that's
right. Yeah.
it? That's all the material? What are we going to do for the next 3 hours? So yes, it's funny. Cheese Boy says he worked on Walking Dead too, but he worked on season, I guess the last season was 11, 10. No, 11's what's starting up. They're doing some interesting changes for COVID too. I was just talking to one of the boom operators. Oh, I pressed the wrong thing. Yeah, with 2 audio guys, I think it's ATM acting up. Well, okay. If have you done an ATM mini walkthrough video, Curtis?
No, I have some news though for Kevin
Well,
and for
that's the
you.
reason why Kevin can't figure it out right now because Curtis hasn't done the video showing you how to do it.
I have just as of today. This is the maiden voyage for my ATEM Mini Pro ISO. I have the brand new one.
Gotcha.
But I'm not using the ISO feature tonight, of course, because we're just live streaming. But
There you go. I will now be a bit
Oh.
disappointed when Curtis runs his 30-minute live stream.
That's it.
It's funny. Anytime Curtis comes to my channel, I keep him. Let's see. One of the things I said in Kevin's live stream on Sunday is I said, here's one of the things you don't realize is that if I can get Curtis on a live stream with me, he'll be there for a long time. And I said,
3 hours
when
and 7 minutes so far.
yes, so far.
I'm gonna wet my pants if we go much longer. Just
If
FYI.
we did the 5+ hour live stream before, and Curtis was there for I think about 4 hours and 45 minutes of it, if not more. And it was so funny because I even said, in 1 month, the amount of time Curtis live streamed on his channel did not amount to as much Curtis content as I gave you in one of my live streams. And I said that,
true.
and Kevin and I laughed about that.
It's
And
true.
unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do the same thing this month. But because Curtis is trying really hard to pull away from this, I'm going to make him have to be rude in order to get out of it, though.
All right, because I'm just gonna walk away. Because
He's gonna
I'm
walk.
serious.
He's gonna
I'm
walk
doing the
away.
potty.
That's the same thing
I'm doing
Kevin
the potty
did.
dance right now.
Did you
I'm
actually
doing-
see? Did you see the Kevin stream? Kevin
No.
literally, after like an hour and 15 minutes, he had to go and get more coffee. So he said, look, if we're going to go past an hour, I'm just going to get up and leave you for a few minutes. So he got up and left and went off and did whatever he did for 5 minutes. He came back and he basically said, I'm going to ask Alan a question and then I'm going to walk away. He took off his headphones and walked away, came back a few minutes later and I was still ranting and he just puts his headphones back on. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But all right, that's fine. We'll be nice to Curtis. Thank you so much for joining us, Curtis. I really appreciate you being here. And it was a lot of fun having you. Thanks everyone for tuning in here tonight. And I guess I'll be doing my editing tonight after all. So, I'll be doing the end of the Zip Viz while editing, probably into the purple one too. But thank you very much as always. It's truly a pleasure to have you here. It's a lot of fun, Curtis.
Thank you so much. The pleasure's mine.
You take care. And thanks everyone for joining in tonight. Thanks for the two super chats we have. Y'all take care, and we will see you in the future on yet another live stream.